And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst here at irishbreakdown.com. And with me, as always, right over there, boom, is Brian Driscoll. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. It is Friday, free-for-all mailbag, ladies and gentlemen. And, yeah, it's my favorite day of the week. And it's Friday before a game day. So things are good. And as Brian Kelly explained in one of his press conferences, this is the first normal prep week of the season for Notre Dame. And same for us. This is our first normal week going into a game, which felt kind of good. Like it was smooth this week, Brian. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that very much. So we got a game tomorrow. Purdue, 2:30 on NBC this time around, which is good for everybody. And, of course, Brian, a little something special about our game before the game anyway, right?
Yeah, I don't know how special it's going to be.
Well, come on. It's special
my mom's
enough.
Not there to cater it this
True.
week. But we will be having our tailgate tomorrow, and we will be in the stadium lot. I'll probably be getting there around 11 o'clock. Can you not hear me, Vince?
No. You're good. I was shaking my head at the message you sent me.
Sorry. I was like, can you not hear me? Am I not? Hello?
Is this thing on?
Well, I'll probably get in there around 11 o'clock. Vince will probably get there around noon.
Yeah.
And, we'll have some food and drinks and no alcoholic drinks, just for those who are wondering. But, I'll be there around noon. It'll be in the stadium lot. I'll have a Notre Dame tent. And we'll have the Irish Breakdown banner hanging. I'm also going to tweet out once I get there and kind of figure out where we are. I'll take a picture sort of the stadium from where we are, so people kind of have an idea of where we are, and I'll tweet out where we are.
Like the light pole number.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So as soon as we get that information, I'll tweet that out. So if you're on Twitter, look that up. But otherwise, just stadium lot, look for a Notre Dame tent and the Irish Breakdown banner, and we'll be there. So I'm really looking forward to. Yeah. Nathan Lytle says, "Can't wait to meet you guys at the tailgate tomorrow." Same way. I'm looking for. I was actually thinking about, and I want to kind of get everybody's opinion on this. Thinking about getting like little name tags that you got to put like your handle, your screen thing on. So yeah. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then Tommy Gunn says, will you need any help setting up tomorrow? I planned on just kind of taking care of it all myself, but if you want to come help out, like I said, I should be getting there around 11 o'clock. I would, of course, appreciate that. So Joseph Sanders says, no beers, got to have some beers for the boys. If you all want to bring alcohol, you're more than welcome to. Vince and I decided, and we announced it a while ago, that we weren't planning on providing any alcohol for a number of reasons. Number one, we don't drink alcohol, so it's kind of like, well, kind of then weird to provide it. Number two, it's just a liability thing. Like somebody takes one guy to do something crazy, and then, well, where'd you get your beer? Well, I had like 20 beers at Irish Breakdown stale, So, yeah,
it's better to be safe than sorry on that one.
Yeah, that's just the kind of the thing. So. But anyway, so I'm excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. I got my tickets for the game tomorrow, so I'm excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to meeting everybody. And so, and just a little update too. So my mom is still in the hospital, but she's in much better spirits. And I got to share this quick story, Vince. So one of our regular listeners to the podcast and someone who's a member of the Irish Breakdown message board is a doctor in the Virginia Beach area. I won't say his name because he doesn't want me to say his name because he doesn't want the credit for it. But so he found out what hospital my mom was in. And again, this guy's a doctor, right? He's kind of busy. He's got a life to lead. So my mom sends me a text message yesterday, and she's like, hey, this guy stopped by my room and said he listens to your show and he's, a fan of your show. And send a card, and she's like, so finds where now Virginia Beach is a big city. This isn't like driving from one side of South Bend to the other side of South Bend, right? Virginia Beach is a big city. Finds out the hospital where my mom is at, and there's several, right? And he goes to her room, talks to her, spends like 10 minutes with her, just kind of encouraging her and, giving her good advice. Then he narcs on my mom, lets me know that she was rocking Notre Dame gear, not Irish Breakdown gear, which I also appreciated. So I had to have that talk with my mom. But her surgeon is also a Notre Dame grad and a Notre Dame fan. So, like, even in Virginia Beach, Virginia, my mom is still being taken care of by Notre Dame people. So, just really meant a lot. But the fact that this doctor took time out of his day, that this community meant enough to him that he felt he should do that.
Yeah.
I mean, Vince, it just shows that we've got something pretty awesome here that we're building, and that this community is becoming what we had hoped it would be from the beginning, which is we wanted to do something different from everybody else. We wanted to build a true sense of community and a place where Irish fans, no matter what your political beliefs are, your religious beliefs are, your whatever beliefs you have, there's one thing we can rally around, and that is our love for Notre Dame and our love for each other and support for each other. So it just meant a lot. And weeks like this are when you realize just how awesome this group of people is, and meant a lot. But I just wanted to share that because it totally made my mom's day. She's like calling family, bragging about it, it just totally made her day. So it was a pretty cool moment.
Well, it's amazing. It's funny because, I sit here in an empty classroom and, doing this and talking to you. And a lot of times it feels like it's you and me. And I personally, I don't want to speak for you. I forget how many people are out there listening and taking it in and what kind of family we have with Irish Breakdown. And it's always humbling to hear people talk about it. And somebody reached out to me actually this morning and was somebody that I knew. I had no idea that he listened. He's like, hey man, just want to let you know, I've been listening. It's an awesome thing you guys are doing. And, good luck on the future and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, man, that is like, I had no idea. You know what I mean? It was like, it was my son's old basketball coach, from a few years ago. And it's like, who knew, and it's awesome that so many people out there are digging what we're doing because we're doing it differently. And I love that. I love that so much. And it's because of everybody that's out there. So thank you for that. Thank you for lifting up Brian's family, and thank you for lifting us up on a daily basis, everybody that's out there. So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox. But
yes, because this is not a day about us.
No.
I just wanted to share that.
Absolutely.
Appreciation. But this is about y'all, and this is Friday Free for All, Vince. So it is time to get to it. And before we just OC Irish fan, I wanted to thank you for this message very much. Tommy Gunn, same to you. Adam Grad, appreciate y'all very, very much. So let's get rocking and rolling, Vince.
Okay, let's do it. Let's look for the first question.
We'll go questions, comments on.
Okay, I'll start at the top. Dying time is near. Just kidding. I'm looking forward to the offensive linemen to man up and play at a higher level of intensity. I believe with each game, the players will start to get the D down. I'll start with the last part of that. I have a lot of faith in what the defense is doing. I think that he's right. With every game, the defense is going to get better and better, and that's scary because the defense has been pretty darn good for the most part.
Outside of 4 plays.
Yeah, they're not there yet. I'm not saying that at all. But if they continue to get better and better and better and better and better each game, they're going to be scary good by midseason. So, yeah, keep your eyes on that defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the first part's the question, Vince, right? The first part's the question. Part of my prediction yesterday, I went 45-20. I'm standing by it. I normally when I make a prediction, I'm like, oh man, I should have. I think of a million different scenarios that I should have done. Absolutely. And I said there, look, based on what we've seen the first 2 games, I should be predicting like a 31-27 game in favor of Notre Dame, right? I mean, that's what I should be doing based on what we've seen. But I just have this gut feeling that says this offensive line is going to come out. Their pride's been challenged, and they're at least going to play hard. And that's all they need to do. They don't have to necessarily be perfectly assignment correct. Just come out and play hard. And, I think we're going to learn a lot about Jeff Quinn. And I know he hears the rumblings. And Brian Kelly definitely hears the rumblings, which is why he's been in full, defense mode this week when it comes to the offensive line, So I know they hear it. So what do they do about it?
Right.
Because Brian Kelly showed in the past when the media criticizes him for something, that's usually the thing that kind of fires him up enough to do something about it, to then sort of, prove us wrong. So
okay. Whatever it takes. Fine.
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. And if that happens, then this is going to be a fun day tomorrow.
No doubt.
No question about that.
Comedy Lover. Great name, by the way. Comedy Lover. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that very much. Says, can Notre Dame set up plays as part of its scripted first offensive series to take advantage of hyper aggressiveness by Karlaftis? And what plays would those be?
It's kind of funny. This name just popped. The comedy lover name. It just made me laugh because I've been on YouTube lately, like on this John Panette kick. You ever heard of him? He's a comedian, hilarious comedian. He passed away somewhat recently, but Vince, I always listen to Dry Bar Comedy on YouTube. Love Dry Bar Comedy. So many good stuff on there. So I don't know why that just popped in my head when I saw that. When I saw Comedy Lover. Can they set up scripted plays in the first year to take advantage of hyper aggressiveness by Karlaftis? Which plays, I don't know if I would call how he plays hyper aggressiveness. I just think they just used him to attack. Yeah. I do, however, think that Comedy Lover is correct here. That I think Notre Dame needs to have a game plan early that goes right at Karlaftis, and whether it's number one running at him. Okay, that is a big key. Now, what makes that a little bit more challenging is the tight ends haven't really been blocking well in the run game. So you can't just say, hey, put a tight end over there and smash them because they haven't really been doing that. But I'd run at him. I would bootleg away from him. I would bootleg to him. Just kind of mix those things up. You always have to be careful to bootleg to him because he tends to be kind of quarterback focused. And sometimes if a guy's quarterback focused on a bootleg, you can boot right back into him and your quarterback's getting smacked in the mouth.
And if you're bootlegging, that's a deep loss.
Right.
That's a lot of yards you're giving up.
Right. But I still think you have to kind of, I wouldn't do it on play one. I'd kind of see what kind of backside run angles he's taking, so I'd run away from first time, a couple times you run away from him. I'm telling my tight ends coach, my running backs coach, hey, look at what Karlaftis' depth is from the backside. If he's coming downhill, like narrow down the line, like he's trying to play the cutback, then I'm booting behind him. If he's coming up wide, like he's looking for the quarterback, then I'm maybe running a draw, right? So I may run a draw behind him, kind of cut back, maybe a sprint draw that cuts underneath him. Exactly.
Yep.
Screen game, I'd screen him, but I wouldn't screen him with a back. I would screen him with like a receiver screen, like a tunnel screen, something like that, because George is a pretty smart player too. And I feel like if you try to chip and then release a back on like a slip screen, I feel like he'll kind of see that. Now
feel it. He can feel it, and he's good about that. Yeah.
The running back screens I would do would be more just like swing screens, just take off, and maybe get a crack or something like that out there. Tunnel screens behind it. I think those are things you can do. I think there maybe are some max protection type of things you can do that if you're going to max pro and send two guys out in a route off of a run action, maybe out of 12 personnel or something like that, you better dang well get a tight end on him, and you better dang well make sure that tight end is getting the job done. I would always want to be careful to do those play actions when he's to my left. If you knew when he was, if there was something based on the field or formation where you kind of dictate where Karlaftis was going to be one side or the other, then I would do that. But if he's going to primarily be on your right side, then it makes it a little bit tougher. But if I could somehow get him backside, that's really when I would want to have my play actions, because I just get worried about a play action as a quarterback. You do your play action and the guy's coming in your face, and then there's just nowhere to go. Or if he's kind of coming from wide, I can kind of half roll away from him and then get a shot off. So those are some things I would do. Vince, do you have any others that you would do?
At my level, whenever we were going up against just a stud defensive end, we would zone option him all day long. Look, I'm not even going to try to put my guy against that guy because my guy is going to lose. So we would just not block him and then make him wrong. I mean, that's how we always went against a really good defensive end. Now, again, my level is lower, but that's one way to neutralize a really good player. Now, really, really good players can almost play both of them if you're not running it correctly. And if you're not gonna be able to do that with Jack Cohen every time. I mean, that's not his game, obviously. So,
but I think there are some stuff you can do,
sure.
Because to the original question, he talked about the hyper aggressiveness. If he's really aggressive, that makes those zone reads more effective.
Absolutely.
I think other things you can do is maybe you can jet him. You know what I mean? You can bring like a jet sweep and zone read off of the jet sweep. And if he's just crashing hard downhill, then there's things you can do where maybe you zone read it and then pull it and throw it out.
Yeah,
that's something I would do. If he's blowing up that run or he's coming up hard, maybe you pull it and you throw it out. I think there's some things they can do to not just have a pull, because as you said, that's not really Jack Cohn's game.
Sure.
But I think he has to be able to, we said this, he has to be able to pull it. He has to be able to pull it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, they're going to have to change what they're doing. Like, they can't keep leaving that guy unblocked and then not have the quarterback pull it. It just, that after a while, that becomes on you as a coach. That's Correct. Not a Jack Cohn thing anymore.
Completely agree.
So that's something. And you don't say, well, hey, We'll just put Tyler Buckner in there to do it. Okay, that's fine. But then after, it doesn't take very long for people to figure out, okay, they're going to run zone read when Tyler Buckner's in the game.
Right, exactly. They're going to have to expand his role a little bit just to keep teams honest.
But more so, they're going to have to find answers when Jack Cohn's in the game. Yes, Jack Cohn's still your starting quarterback and should be still your starting quarterback. So those are things that they're just going to have to figure out. And it ties into this question of having a plan for George Karlaftis, because he's the only defensive lineman that can, even if the line plays well, can still blow you up. I mean, he's that good of a player.
Bang 1801, please don't let this game take 5 years off my life again. I would appreciate that as well. I feel like I may have lost a little bit of time on this earth as well watching last week. So I appreciate that. I will say, though, being in the stands next to Brian was fantastic because we could celebrate. And that was, I mean, I never thought I'd be celebrating as much as I did against Toledo, but when they scored that touchdown at the end with Michael Mayer, I was cheering and it was fantastic. So maybe I got some life back at the end there. So I thought that was good.
Vince, we have a couple super chats I wanted to pull up. Here's one from Richard Maltby.
Yes, he says, I was watching the BK Zoom presser from yesterday and noticed 3 Coach of the Year plaques over his left shoulder. Let's see if he's truly one of the best in the business this Saturday at 2:30. His prediction, 42-14 Notre Dame, which is right along the lines of where you were, Brian.
Yeah. I mean, I got them with one more score each, a field goal for Notre Dame and 6 points for Purdue. I mean, we're very close on the same page here. And look, this is kind of where I'm coming from, Vince. I mean, look, Brian Kelly is a 3-time Coach of the Year winner, right? He's won it twice at Notre Dame, won it once at Cincinnati. Guy has 2 championship rings, and people talk about him, as possibly a, Hall of Famer, all these other kind of things. And to a degree, there's some merit to that. But look, if you're a great coach, you've got to be able to find answers against Purdue. I mean, you've got to be able to get your team motivated to come out and play to their potential and their ability against a team like Purdue. I mean, that's on you as a coach. And if you can't do that, then something's clearly missing. So you've got 2 games under your belt. You know your team's flaws. Get them fixed. But more importantly, your team needs to be ready to emotionally come out and play tomorrow.
Absolutely.
That's the big key. And that's not necessarily something that we saw from this team.
Agreed.
This first 2 games. We have another one down here from – you got
Battery Boy. Battery Boy gives us a super chat. Thank you.
He's got another one, Vince.
Oh, he got another one down there?
Yeah, that has a question. Yep.
Beautiful. Let me scroll. There it is. Again, from Battery Boy, thank you very much. He says, thanks for being the best Notre Dame football source. My wife and I can't wait to tailgate and talk ball with IB Nation tomorrow, a.k.a. Rouse Productions. Okay, yes. Very good. Okay, good. And well, kind of a name with a name there, right? That's awesome, man. Yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. It's going to be a lot of fun. He's
just going to get there an hour later because he's got to pick up his kid. It has nothing to do with him not wanting to help set up. I'm sure. Nothing at all to do with that.
Kidding me? It has nothing to do with it at all.
Keep telling yourself that there, Vince.
Why a coach would call a practice on a Saturday when there's a Notre Dame game, I don't know. He and I are going to have a chat.
That guy needs to be fired.
I'm telling you.
One of my favorite – you ever watch SEC Shorts?
All the time.
I love that. There's one from a few years ago where it's these 2 ladies and the one girl says to her friend, like, we're engaged. We're going to get married. And she's like, oh, hugging and, doing that whole excited thing. And she gets around to telling her friend that, like, the wedding is in, something like the last Saturday of November. And so this other girl's head kind of pops up and it's like Egg Bowl, Florida State, Iron Bowl. And she takes the ring off the girl, walks up to the lake, throws it in the lake. She goes, let's get your dating profile updated. So it just kind of struck my end. Like that's how I feel like about your coach. Like, you gotta,
it's like, come on, man.
It's time to find a new coach at that point in time. Be scheduling practices for Saturday in South Bend, Indiana area.
I know.
Practices on a Saturday in the fall.
I know. And it's not like football coaches who get it done at 7 in. Get it out of the way, but no, gotta do it right in the middle of the morning. But
what sport is this? Soccer?
Yeah.
Figures.
I know. I digress. But anyway, here we go. YZY taught me. Says, any idea if we will wear the new green jerseys?
Yizzy, I think it's what that is.
Is it Yizzy?
Yizzy.
Yeah, my bad. Yizzy taught me. Any idea if we will wear the new green jerseys or if the Irish red green is just for the fans?
Usually in the past when they do this, like majority of the time, we see this every year. They do this,
Right.
Irish wear green thing, and everybody thinks they're going to wear green jerseys, and they don't.
They never do.
So I'd be surprised if they wore green tomorrow. It'd be cool. I mean, I kind of like that change up. I wouldn't mind Notre Dame doing alternate uniforms at times. It's just I don't want it to be crazy, and I think the green is sort of sticking with tradition. Because they have worn green uniforms for regular season games. I mean, Notre Dame's uniforms used to actually be green.
Yes, that was their regular home uniform back in the late 70s, I believe, when Montana was there.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. Well, that's why in 2017 or 2007 they did like a 30th anniversary of that 77 team.
Right.
That was the first Notre Dame game I was ever at. Was that one in 07. Your boy Evan Sharpley was quarterback that day. They got
He still hasn't won a game as a starter, so that did not end well.
You said it.
I mean, dude.
You said it. You don't need to dog on him because he has as many wins as a Notre Dame quarterback as you do, Vince. You don't need to dog on him for that, okay?
He's got more snaps than I do, though, so I'll give him that one. I'll give him that one. So hopefully he and I aren't doing a show together anytime soon. All right, John Klimek says, is changing the blocking scheme in season a thing, gap versus zone? Could that help the O-line play?
Yeah, I mean, it is a thing if you already kind of have that built in, John. And I think that there are some gap schemes that Notre Dame runs. The counter play, for example, is a gap scheme. It's a down, kick, pull concept. It's similar. So I think there's enough in their offense where they can alter. Now, I don't know if I would say change as much as maybe alter what you're doing. And so I do think there's some reason for Notre Dame to kind of create a little bit of it's what kind of confused me when Coach Kelly was talking about they need to simplify things, Vince, because I don't know how much more simplified they can get in the run game. I think they kind of already are a little overly simplified in the run game. I think they need to create some things that change the eye discipline of teams because right now teams are just kind of flying downhill on them.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is, in Tommy Rees's defense is, I mean, they can't execute the basic things you're doing yet. How do you build on your run game when they can't execute inside zone? I mean, they literally can't execute inside zone right now. I mean, so if you can't do that, I don't know what tricks you have up your sleeve at that point.
It's not an X's and O's, it's a Jimmy's and Joe's. I mean, that's the problem right now, in my opinion.
You mean the execution of the Jimmys and Joe's?
Yeah.
Let me ask. Can you explain that? Because usually when people use that phrase, you're talking about the talent level of players. I just want to get are you saying it's a talent problem or an execution of the Jimmys?
I'm saying it's an execution problem by the guys. Like, and of course that has to do with coaching and all of that. I get all that, but it's not the running the wrong plays. You know what I mean? Like they have to execute the plays that are there, and they're not complicated plays in the first place. And it's not like they're throwing a bunch of stuff and seeing what sticks. They're just not executing the things that Notre Dame has been good at for a long, long time. And it's not complicated stuff. So to me, it's an execution problem. It's not a scheme problem. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Now that I agree with, yes.
Yeah. So I use the wrong terminology.
Trying to make sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it fits.
Yeah.
I just wanted to find out what version of that you're referring to, because I do know that, I don't know. I've been told that there are some that are saying, they don't have the players they used to have. I've seen it on Facebook. Hey, look, Jared Patterson's the only really highly ranked recruit they have on the offensive line, which is just like, what? Jared Patterson's their fourth lowest ranked recruit. I mean, if you're looking at the starting offensive line and looking at them from a recruiting ranking standpoint, which, that only goes so far.
Yeah,
he's the fourth. Exactly. He's the fourth highest ranked recruit on the board. I mean, there's 8 offensive linemen on the roster that were higher ranked recruits than Jared Patterson coming out of high school. So it should not be a talent problem. I still don't think. I mean, you watch Tosh Baker when he's right. That's a real talented kid. The problem with Tosh, however, and this is where Tosh is different than Joe Alt, who's I've heard is doing really well as a freshman, and Rocco Spindler, who, to me needs to play as a freshman, who had a good spring, and Blake Fisher, as those guys kind of showed up at Notre Dame, well coached, advanced, ready to play. Joe Alt's dad played at Iowa. I believe he played in the NFL. Rocco's dad played in the NFL. Blake was well schooled showing up to Notre Dame. I mean, when you're dominating by the third practice of the spring, that's not a coaching thing. With all due respect, that's just that kid's really flipping good. It's the guys like Tosh Baker, who is very talented, but what was really raw and needed a lot of, needed to be coached. Those are the guys that aren't playing to their potential right now.
Right.
And I don't view that as a player problem, I view that as a development problem. And people can get mad about that all they want and getting their feelings about being critical of Jeff Quinn. I don't care. I've been saying it for years.
Yeah.
We said before the season, we're going to find out what Jeff Quinn's made of this season, because they weren't good in 18. They were just average. They were above average for most of 18. That's it. They regressed in 2019. Brian Kelly even admitted that last year. Now, he wouldn't admit it during the 2019 season.
Of course not.
But in 2020, he talked about, once it was clear the line was good, he talked about how, we didn't live up to the Notre Dame standard last year and all that kind of stuff, which yeah, okay, we all knew that. And we kind of made fun of it at the time, Vince, you and I did. But
that's what we do.
2020 goes well, and you had Chris Watt, you had Harry Hiestand was kind of an outside influence on things. That's just a fact. You had veteran players that were recruited and initially coached by Hiestand. Now this is a lineup made up almost entirely of guys who were coached by Jeff Quinn.
Right.
There's only one guy left on the roster that was coached by Harry Hiestand. Just one. It's Josh Luck. The rest were recruited and coached by Jeff Quinn. And so he's going to have to get this thing turned around pretty quickly. I think he can. And I hope he can, but the fact of the matter is through 2 games, it's been a bad job. So it's up to him to quickly get this thing going. But the first thing, as we talked about, Vince, is you got to get them playing hard and physical.
Yes.
Because back to John's question is it won't matter if you change the scheme if they're not playing hard. If they're playing hard and that part gets better, then some of this stuff will start to take care of itself. And then I think then you can maybe, as they get more experience playing together, then you can maybe add a little bit to your repertoire. And that's when your career run game can start having a little bit more success.
Okay, Matt says, heard some rumblings that Ohio State is cooling on Nwankpa and that Iowa and Notre Dame are now his leaders. Any substance to that?
Usually when Ohio State starts fading with a kid, the people
losing.
that cover the team, they'll say, well, they've cooled on him. Have you watched Ohio State's secondary?
Yeah. They're terrible.
If they're cooling on Xavier Nwankpa, then they need to fire whoever is responsible for deciding who is going to be recruited in the secondary. So,
right.
But if they do, so good for them. Hey, look, Notre Dame decided not to recruit George Karlaftis. I mean, Mike Elko did a great job in a short period of time in Notre Dame. He's a great coach. Every coach makes mistakes. George Karlaftis was clearly one of them. I didn't love George Karlaftis coming out of high school either. People miss, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
Sometimes those misses can be huge benefits for other programs. And in this case, I think that hopefully could be one for Notre Dame when it comes to Xavier Nwankpa. But if Ohio State bails, I would start feeling really, really good about that. Those thoughts for Notre Dame.
Yeah, because you've mentioned that in the past that when Ohio State cools on somebody, that's because they're losing. And they're
losing ground with him. And it's just bowing out before they –
Right. Yeah. That's what they do. They bow out before they lose officially, right? So I love that. And I learned that from you. All right. Irish for Life says, is Amorion Walker all but officially gone? What is the future of wide receiver recruiting?
It's a big question. I really don't know. I mean, is he all but gone? Well, he's not officially gone, obviously, but you said all but officially gone. I mean, it sounds like it. I don't have any information on this. I know it's being reported the Michigan mods that for Rivals and 24/7 are basically all predicting he's going to flip to Michigan. He's on record as saying his whole family grew up as Michigan fans. Okay, go to Michigan.
Bye.
That's what I would do. And I think they need to be proactive with it. I think forget trying to convince him to stay. Because here's the thing. Look, in today's era, you've got to handle recruiting differently. You got to handle how you run your team differently. Now the kids can just transfer whenever the heck they want.
Right.
Because if a kid feels this way about Michigan and he's this close, let's say you are able to somehow convince him to stay. Well, what if he doesn't play next year? He's just going to leave and go to Michigan or something like. You have to – these kids that you got to really just beg to come. And I don't mean beg to come from like you got to recruit them hard. That's different. If a kid's uncommitted, that's a different deal than a kid that's committed to you and has taken 75,000 visits since he committed to you.
Exactly.
He's taken more visits to Michigan than he has to you. Say, yeah, you know what? I can't hold this kid's hand for the next 4 years and try to convince him to stay every time something doesn't go his way. What they're going to do, I don't know. I hope that this is one of those things where they finally get their heads on straight and go after the guys they need to get. They need to go after Xavier Bradshaw. They need to stop messing around with him. They could have him in the class tomorrow if they wanted to. And so they need to get him on campus ASAP. They need to stop playing around there. And, he's not big enough. That's he's not big enough, which explains what they're doing at receiver, why we're not seeing, why we didn't see Lawrence Keys play enough, and why we see the way that they're just not willing to adapt their offense to have the smaller players. With Braden Lindsey, they're using him to kind of stretch the field vertically, but smaller, faster guys need to be able to do more than just stretch the field vertically. They have to have some adaptation to their offense that says, hey, these quick, shifty, after-the-catch guys bring value. We need to go get those guys, and we need to make sure that our offense is built in a way that allows us to take advantage of their talents, just like we're going to take advantage of Tobias Merriweather's talents. And you want a perfect example of why? Go watch the Clemson game against Georgia. They had no receivers that could do stuff after the catch, and so it was all vertical-based routes. And because their quarterback couldn't, the line couldn't protect the quarterback, and the quarterback wasn't mobile, those vertical routes were taken away, and the offense could do nothing against Georgia, despite having these great big receivers. You have to have versatility. When Notre Dame was dominating the Clemson offensive line last year, Clemson was still able to have success because they were able to just dump the ball to Travis Etienne, and they were able to dump the ball off to Amari Rodgers, and they can do stuff after the catch. You have to have those kind of players. And, you look at the offense moving forward without those. I mean, who is going to be that guy moving forward? You just move the only freshman or sophomore that fits that mold to defense, because that's not Lorenzo Styles' game. And he showed that on that little look screen he called. He didn't really make a move. Lorenzo's more of a Braden Lindsey vertical guy. He's not that shifty after the catch guy that make you miss. And that's okay. He's still outstanding at what he does. It's just understanding what your players are. But you don't have that kind of guy. And then once Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree are gone, and by the time the 2022 class shows up, Kyron's probably going to be gone, and Chris Tyree might be entering his last year. You have to ask yourself, who's going to be that guy? You're going to have a running back field of guys like Logan Diggs and Audric Estime. They just offered a 6'2", 230-pound kid that can play running back and linebacker in the 2022 class. They're not going after really that many shifty guys at running back. You're not going after shifty guys at receiver. You're recruiting one type of player, and that has been proven to not be effective. The teams that have the best offenses, if they have one type of player, they have more of the shifty or faster guys, not the bigger guys. And, it's maddening.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Because this receiver class has a chance to be special.
Well, and they've been burned.
CJ Williams is really good. Go get Xavion Bradshaw. Go get Major Everhart. Don't circle back to these guys like, Antonio Williams, who are just like the guys you already have. Which is what they're doing. That's what they're going to do, unfortunately. I just hope that they change course, Vince. Sorry, go ahead.
They've been burned by small, fast receivers so much in the past few years that
against Toledo.
Why do you not see you know what? We need to do that more. I don't.
Yeah, Devontae Smith, Amorian Rogers, those kind of guys. I mean, Hunter Renfro in 2018.
It's starter in the NFL right now. Yeah. I mean, it's for the Raiders, but still, anyway.
Right.
All right. Moving forward, John Klimek says, I was rewatching some of the games. I would like to see more motion pre-snap, something to give Notre Dame a head start. Blitz identifying, coverage, etc.
I agree with that. They do a little bit of that. I mean, they move a lot pre-snap, but it's usually just the tight end kind of moving across.
Right.
They don't do a ton of other motions, and they'll do jets, but jets don't really tell you anything because you're timing those up to to kind of hit as you go. It's not really a coverage ID or type of thing. So yes, I would. I mean, look, here's my thing, Vince. I want to say this before you move on. You have to do one of two things if you're going to be the kind of team Notre Dame is. And that is they're kind of being back to a heavy 11 personnel team, which I don't have a problem with.
Sure.
You have to do one of two things. One is you have to either go faster to where you're just lining up and going, or B, you have to be more move. You have to move around. And this is the issue that I talked about before Chip Long showed up. I remember in 2015 and 2016, the one thing I would complain about is look, I can tell you basically what they're doing based on how they lined up. Because of how the back was lined up, if he was here and if the tight end was there, and this kind of motion, you kind of had a pretty good idea of what they were going to do. And if I can figure that out, defensive coordinators can figure that out. But we're seeing a little bit of that this year. It's not as predictable as it was before because Tom Reese has done a nice job putting some pass game stuff there. But there is still a level of teams are kind of figuring out where you're going to be and are able to adjust their coverages to certain guys because you always know these guys are going to be here, right? And so I think they either need to A, speed up, which I would love to see them do, or B, do more stuff pre-snap. Move your tight ends, then send a jet. You got to be able to do some more of that stuff. If you're not going to be snapping the ball, if you're going to be snapping the ball under 15 seconds a lot, then you need to be doing more stuff like that to not only, what he said, coverage ID and stuff like that, but it's also just getting them thinking and moving and getting them to have to make coverage checks and those types of things. I think those are things that you need to be able to do if you're going to be able to attack a team with the type of offense they're running. You have to do one of those two things. And I've said this for years. You have to be able to do one or the other. And the reason I didn't complain about the Chip Long area is because I felt Chip did a lot of that. Motion the tight ends over, then bring a motion across, things like that. And I think Coach Reese needs to do. I mean, that's the one complaint I've had about his design of his offense so far. Is the one big complaint is that.
Irish 812 says, how much weight do you put in the fact that Toledo and a lot of these lower conference teams have a ton of returning experience due to COVID? Returning all 22 starters is a huge advantage early.
In some areas, I think there's merit to this conversation. And we talked about how Toledo had a lot coming back. And so when it comes to the execution aspect of it, sure, I put a lot of merit to that. But the and honestly, that's also why I haven't been as kind of down on the defense as maybe some people are, because of what you said. But for the offense, it's a little different story, Vince, because you could have 45 first and second team players coming back, plus an ex third guy to position, all coming back. And that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not Notre Dame's playing hard, whether or not Notre Dame's playing with emotion, whether or not Notre Dame's playing with fire. It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not the offensive line is coming off the ball hard. Nothing. And so certain things, to your question, Irish 812, there's something to that. It still doesn't excuse a 3-point win. It doesn't.
No, agreed.
And it definitely doesn't excuse, in my opinion, the way that the offensive line played, and not from an execution standpoint. So those are the things. So some areas I think there's merit to it, and others I don't. But at the same time, you're now 2 games in, so moving forward, that's not really an excuse Notre Dame can use.
Luke Walker, Football 101 question. When running an RPO or even a read option, how does the offense scheme around the defense when the defense has set responsibilities? For example, the end crashing on the backside, the offense or the outside linebacker spying on the quarterback.
You want to take a shot at this, Vince?
Let's see. How does the offense scheme around the defense when the defense?
Did you not pay attention to it when you read it?
Well, I need to reread it just to make sure I'm answering it correctly. Sometimes I'm just reading and not reading for comprehension, as they say here in the education world. It's fine if let's say you're running a read option, right? And the end is your read and he's crashing. Okay. I mean, that tells you what you're supposed to do then. You pull and you go. I mean, that makes your decision and makes your job that much easier. If you have the end crashing and an outside linebacker spy on the quarterback, then you need to have a third option, right? If your only 2 options are pull and or run, right? Then you need to have a third option where you're throwing to, a wide receiver on a stop route, just standing out there, or he's running a slant or something short or whatever. You've got a wide receiver doing something. So you add a third option to it, right? If it's old school, you're running Navy's triple option, the third option is the pitch to the back, right? So, that's where preparation comes in. That's where knowing what the defense is kind of up to comes into play, knowing kind of how they will operate against certain looks. But you have to have additional options. That's the bottom line.
And that's, I think, where we saw a little bit of this from Notre Dame on Saturday against Toledo. And Luke, this is a great question. It really is no different than scheming any other play. It's just about, okay, if this is what they're doing, what are our best reads for that? So, for example, you talked about RPOs. So if a team is going to have a guy tucked in and kind of spying the quarterback, which is more so, let's just say they're doing that when Tyler Buckner's in the game, okay? Because I don't think they're going to spy on Jack Cohn. I hope they do. I hope they keep a linebacker there to spy on Jack Cohn. But I think Luke's question is more general, right. But I think it fits really well when we talk about Tyler Buckner at quarterback. Okay, so then you say, okay, then what do we do against that? All right, so is he playing outside? Is he playing more inside? Is he staying at the first level? Does he work out with his eyes on the quarterback? All those things are going to determine what type of route concepts we're going to run. So if he's just kind of sitting there in the flat, well, okay, what's the cornerback doing? All right, is he playing up tight? Is he playing off? That's going to determine my route combinations. Where's the safety at? Are they playing single high? Are they playing too high? If they're playing single high, and let's say it's the safety or an outside linebacker kind of in that hole, then I know I've got some one-on-one stuff, so I can call outs and hitches. Well, the nice thing about outs and hitches are they're convertible routes. What that means is if I am calling a quick out or a hitch, okay, I always taught conversion. So if that guy's pressed at the line, you automatically convert to a go route. If that guy's off but squats up at the snap, then you convert it and you run right by him. Assuming, again, not on a smash, you have to understand the concept, but when we're just running like quick game, you have that. So if they're playing single high, I'm going to call outs and hitches, because if that guy sits there and the corner's off, then we're banging the hitch, we're banging the out cuts all day. We're just stealing 5, 6, 7 yards like Notre Dame did on the first series against Toledo.
Right.
If that corner's playing up, then that's cool, because I got my one-on-ones to Braden Lindsay and Kevin Austin against cornerbacks I think they should have some success with. If the guy's buzzing out, right, so working outside but eyes inside the quarterback, well, then I'm going to break in some more in break around. I may run some slants. I may run some quick in cuts. I may run a tunnel screen off an RPO where I take my slot guy or my tight end and I have him go out and block that slot, run a tunnel inside of it, catch that ball moving inside, and then catch him. If he wants to peek in the backfield, I may run a swing screen, okay, where I may just, if he wants to peek in the quarterback, then I'm going to read it and I'm going to pull it and throw it to the slot guy or to the running back, something like that out of your two-back. There's all different types of things you can do. If he's going to buzz out there, then I'm going to run a swing and bring a slant right behind it. There's all types of concepts you can do that are going to be determined each week. So your read for the quarterback's the same. I got my eyes here and here.
Yep.
But then it's based on where I'm throwing it is based on the route combination you call, and that is going to be determined by what the defense is doing. So, and that's kind of something you do every week. And we're starting to see Notre Dame. We saw it last week. Notre Dame is expanding their RPO. That's one thing I've been very happy with. We've seen a lot of RPOs. Now, what you have to understand is an RPO isn't only when they pull and throw it. An RPO also sometimes they hand it off. And there's been a lot of RPOs.
First part of it's what the R stands for.
And that's always your first read. It's like give unless. That's what we taught, right? You give unless the defense gives you a reason not to, right? So the handoff is always the primary responsibility there, unless they tell you otherwise. And so we've seen a lot of RPOs. We haven't seen them pull and throw them a lot. We did see early in the first couple series against Toledo. We saw it and was successful. Toledo adjusted, and Notre Dame's now got to be able to adjust in kind. So once the run game gets better, that alone is also going to affect the RPO game. Because right now, teams aren't having to put extra numbers in the box against the run. They're beating it with their front four and their Mike linebacker.
Yep.
And as long as that's going to happen, you're going to be limited on how successful you can be.
Absolutely. Okay, Robert is in apparently a really good mood. He says, "You guys rock. Notre Dame's winning the Natty. Have faith, boys."
I got faith. I said last week I have not changed my prediction yet on the season.
Matt says, if James Franklin does end up taking the USC job, do you think there's a real shot at flipping guys like Singleton and or Saunders?
Singleton, yes. Yeah, I don't think Saunders, but Singleton, yes. Absolutely.
Well, since he asked that question, I'll pile on here. Do you like that move, James Franklin to USC? I think he would recruit really well out there.
I think he'd recruit well, but I think he'd have the same problem at USC that he has at Notre Dame. He's not a good game day coach. He's a good motivator. He's a good recruiter. He's not a very good head coach. He's made some very questionable hires. He had some good ones too. But I'm not worried about James Franklin there. He'll recruit well. I mean, okay. Right. So
I'm just curious your thoughts.
Yeah. I don't think that. I mean, that he would be better than Clay Helton, no doubt. But I
mean, the bar's not very high.
Yeah, that's not a move that would concern me if I'm Notre Dame and I'm handling my business the way I need to handle my business. Okay. And in some ways, that could be good for Notre Dame, depending on who Penn State hires, because Notre Dame needs to have more success on the recruiting trail. Notre Dame needs to have more success against Penn State than they do.
That's
USC.
fair.
They're always going to be successful out west. I mean, think about the guys they've lost to Penn State in this class: Drew Shelton, Caden Saunders, Nicholas Singleton, Drew Aller. I mean, this Notre Dame recruiting class looks a whole lot different if those four guys are in it, right, on offense. You know what I mean? Like you put
Sure.
Caden Saunders in this receiver class, you put Nick Singleton at running back, you give me Drew Aller at quarterback, you give me Drew Shelton as my 4th offensive line commit. I'm feeling really good about this class. And Penn State right now is kicking their butt on the offensive side of the ball. It kind of makes me sad.
Fair enough. Nathan Lytle says, thoughts on the big dumb drum not being allowed in the stadium?
Such a non-story to me. I mean, first of all, Notre Dame, you're being petty. And don't give me all the, it's COVID-related. They said they don't allow opposing teams in the big tunnel. Now opposing teams are only allowed to use the small tunnel. And I'm sure it's COVID-related. You know, they'll use that. But, I mean, it's just they don't allow.
How did Toledo get their band in? They had to have used
They had to come out through the visitors' locker room.
Oh, the band did?
There's now two locker rooms.
Well, I know that, but I didn't realize the band came out that one single file. That single file locker room.
Yep.
I missed that last week.
It's petty. Okay. It's a bad look on Notre Dame. It's also just irrelevant to me. It's a freaking drum. It's a freaking drum. So, but look, anytime you give ESPN and the national media a chance to take a shot at you, they are. It's just like, look, it's dumb. Just let them freaking bring the drum. And look, and if you only want to have it be Notre Dame personnel, then get 5 people from Notre Dame's band to say, hey, look, because bands are usually like, exception of Stanford's band, who's just a bunch of losers. Most bands are like it's kind of like football players. Like, hey, look, I'm gonna battle you today, but there's a level of respect.
Well, remember the Toledo band and the Notre Dame band playing together, during halftime.
Have 5 Notre Dame kids wheel that dang drum down through the tunnel, since you don't want to let Purdue personnel use it. I mean, it's such a but at the same time, it's like the people that are making a deal out of this. To me, it's just like, come on, you don't have anything else better to do,
right? It's a pretty big game here, and we're talking about a drum.
Yeah, I think that's better to worry about, but the form, whatever.
I know. I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that. That was good. Yeah. Let's see.
I did want to just Irish for Life. I do appreciate that very, very much. Appreciate that very much. Curtis also threw something up. I really appreciate all of y'all very, very, very much.
Matthew says, if the O becomes predictable and Notre Dame loses, do you see a situation where Brian Kelly takes over the play calling?
I hope not. I don't think. Yeah, I hope not.
Direction.
But at the same time, I mean, there does need to be accountability. If Tommy Rees is running very predictable plays and things like that, then something needs to be done. I don't think predictability has been the problem on offense. Look, I have no reason not to be critical of Tommy Rees. None. I mean, I didn't think, everybody knows my stance. So if I'm saying he's calling good games so far, that, maybe give that a little bit more credence than you normally would, because I'm not necessarily someone who's been a Tommy Rees bandwagon guy since the moment he got hired.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
But my job is to call it how I see it. And how I've seen it so far in 2 games is I like what Tommy Rees is doing. And he's doing it with a terrible offensive line. And here's the thing y'all have to understand. When your offensive line is as bad as Notre Dame's, there's not a whole lot of things on your play sheet you can, we'll just do, okay, they got to block for that one. They got to block for that one. They got to block for that one. There's not a whole lot that you can go to when your offensive line can't block Toledo's defensive line. So
absolutely,
I want to keep that in mind. We do have a couple super chats down here, Vince. If you need me to pull them up,
I got them. We haven't gotten down too far yet. So,
okay.
John A1 says, "What are your expectations for Tosh Baker versus Purdue? How much can a player clean up his game in 1 week?"
A decent amount if you focus on it. That's the thing that's why
that's what you said.
You need to have the GA. Tosh Baker's your pet project.
Yes,
he is all you're worried about this week. He can clean up a lot because Tosh is really talented. It's not a question of talent. It's a question of preparation, and it's going to be up to them to get it done. So as simple as that. But my expectations, honestly, John, I don't know what they are, because again, it just comes down to a fundamental lack of faith in this coaching staff from an offensive line standpoint to get him ready.
Right.
I hope that they made it a priority to get him ready, because if they did, I think Tosh will. If they really commit to Tosh for this next 6 weeks while Blake is out, I feel really good about where his game is going to be by the time Blake comes back. Then you start getting, okay, so now what do you do? Right? Do you move Lug inside the guard and put Tosh at right tackle? Do you put Blake at right tackle? Do you put Blake at guard? I mean, there's all types of different options that it gives you that can be exciting. So that's why I hope that they get it figured out soon.
Jacob Dunn, thank you, Jacob, for the super chat. He says, does it seem like Cone takes shorter dropbacks than normal? I'm wondering if that is part of the reason he always seems to have a guard or center in his lap.
No, he has a guard in the center's lap because the guard and centers are getting their ass kicked snap after snap.
Right, exactly. He's not taking a shorter drop.
I mean, look, I understand what Jacob's coming from here. And by the way, Jacob, I appreciate your super chat very, very much. It's not a shot at Jacob. I understand people trying to figure out, like, it can't be this bad, right? Like, the Notre Dame offensive line can't be this bad. The coaching can't be that bad. So they're looking to blame not Jacob, but there's people blaming Cone for this, that, and the everything. And it's like, no, it's not. That's not the issue. He's taking normal drops. He's taking normal 3-step drops out of shotgun. He's taking normal. Sometimes it's a hop back because the ball is supposed to come out quickly. I don't have any problem with his drops, which is why some of his sacks last week were like 9 and 10 yard losses. He had a 9 and a 10 yard loss last week. The 10 yard, he just took a couple steps back. The 9 yard, he basically got to his drop and went down because the pressure got to him so quickly. So, no. And I also think you can't take too deep of a drop because then you give the tackles – if you drop back too much, you've now taken away your offensive tackle's angle from being able to ride that guy out because then you're just going to ride him right into the quarterback. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. The solution to this is your guards have to play better.
Yes, that's absolutely. They can't get pushed back into the quarterback's lap. I don't care how much of a drop he's taking.
Yeah. What I would encourage you to do, Jacob, is watch the pass pro of the Notre Dame offensive guards. The footwork. They're giving up a lot of ground, and then I would encourage you to go back and maybe watch what the guards did last year from a pass pro standpoint, or watch Alabama's guards and how they pass pro, and look at it from that way.
Rob Titoff says, Vincent Bryan, need some advice on how to deal with my situation. My flight next week leaves at 2:40 p.m. and lands at 4 p.m., so obviously I will not know the result of the Wisconsin game until I land. So you're going to be 2 hours and 40 minutes into the game at that point, right? Is my math right on that one? Because it's a noon Eastern start. I assume the flight's at 2:40 Eastern. You're going to be pretty close to the end. Hopefully the game's not even in doubt anymore, and it won't matter.
Yeah, I would encourage you, because from the time when they have to start to board, it's probably going to be like 30 minutes before that. I would just see if they have Wi-Fi on the internet, and I would stream it.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. If you're going to – otherwise, the other option, Rob, is don't watch it at all. Don't even start watching it at noon. Stay off your phone.
Over. Yeah.
Just don't do anything, and then when you get to wherever you need to get to, pull up. I know this is hard nowadays. So look, trust me. Like, I tried to do things like, hey, we're gonna go out to breakfast, and I'm not gonna have my phone. And then it's like 10 minutes in, I'm like, where's my freaking phone? Like, I need to find out.
It doesn't work. It does. Yeah. This day and age, it does not work.
If you can do that, give it a shot. Otherwise, I would see if they have Wi-Fi, and then I would just try to stream it.
Yeah,
there,
because it'll be on the Fox Sports app. And you should be able to do it that way. Jason Rose says, I think getting Jordan Botelho back is a big boost, more depth and more versatility. It's the versatility part for me that's the big part of getting Botelho back. I hope that he kind of takes that role of the Isaiah Foskey and, going to linebacker. I'd love to see Jordan Botelho in that spot. I think that's where he could really thrive. I think he is the most pure speed rusher that they have. And so putting him on the edge and just telling him, go get the quarterback, I think that is going to be a huge spot for Jordan. You're right. He does add depth. There's no question about it. And then I'd also, because of the depth part of this, I would love to see him over at Viper, where obviously he's been practicing, and then see Justin Adamiola over at the big end side and see what he can do over there. Not saying that Nana isn't doing a good job, because he's doing just fine, but being able to move Justin from Viper also to big end makes you deeper as well. So now you've got versatility with Justin. Now you've got versatility with Jordan. Jordan can play that linebacker spot for Isaiah Foskey, where I think he's going to do a better job of getting off of those blocks, coming downhill. Isaiah Foskey is best when he's on the line, not when he's at linebacker. So bring Isaiah Foskey up to the line, put Jordan Botelho back there. So there's a lot of things that Jordan Botelho brings to this defense that I always thought that he was going to be good for this defense, but with some of the injuries and some of the things that have happened at linebacker and, just attrition, he's going to be a huge boost to this defense. No question about it. Eric 1863 says, "Hi guys, go Irish." Outside of the actual game tonight, how do you guys, outside of the actual game thought, how do you guys feel about the Purdue Drum not being allowed into the game? There's a visitors tunnel now. Is there any update on this? Yeah, the visitors tunnel is too small, so they can't get it in through there, and it's dumb. I think that's the bottom line, right, Brian?
And it's like now, if Notre Dame lets it in, it's like they're caving into pressure. It's like now that you've taken a stance, you need to just hold firm and not look like you had an arbitrarily stupid stance, and now people are hammering you and you give in on it. Like if you had a conviction about it, then stick with your conviction and don't give a crap what anybody else thinks or says. You didn't give a crap that your fans didn't like the Peacock thing. You still did that.
Yeah.
Right. So why do you care what anybody thinks about a drum? So,
absolutely.
Is it a situation that they should have put themselves in? No. Is it something I care much about? No. Is it much to do about nothing? Yes. And
it's not going to change my
and your program's in good place when the negative people that are part of things kind of have to focus on you not letting a drum in. I'm a little bit more concerned about the offensive line coaching right now than I am about a drum. But if it's something that matters to you, I'm not saying you shouldn't care. I'm saying I don't.
Yeah.
You can care all you want. I mean, that's fine. If it matters to you, that's great. I don't care. I don't care. It's a freaking drum.
Right. Exactly. Curtis Hewitt says, "I really think this will be Indy's get-right game. Notre Dame 45, Purdue 17.
Yeah. Hey, Notre Dame doesn't have to let the Purdue band even be there.
Good point. They don't let the Stanford
teams
band
that don't let
anymore.
Notre Dame come be at games, right? So, whatever. Flipping band. I mean, although I will say this, I do love bands as part of football. That was the first thing I said to you last week, Vince. We got to our seats when the band came out. I was like, this is the part that I miss being in the press box because we don't get to hear the band.
Yeah, that was cool. I did enjoy the band. I did enjoy that part of it. There's no question. It just adds to the whole college.
Yeah. I love the band. Atmosphere. I just don't care to have a debate about whether they should or shouldn't have a drum there. That's
man. Clashmore Mike says, "I see Blake Fisher as a guard. If Tosh Baker develops into a regular, do you think Fisher would be better fit as a jumbo left guard, setting up Alt and Spindler on the right side for next season?"
Yes, I would love that. I don't know if Blake Fisher would like that very much, but I would just kind of say, hey, why don't you just wait to see what Quentin Nelson's next contract looks like and then determine if you think it's not smart to.
He could be a massive, just a bulldozer guard.
Look, I think Blake has been better at tackle than I thought he would be.
Sure.
I think Blake could be a really good tackle. I just think Blake could be an elite guard. Elite.
Yeah.
Elite player. And I think as you project him to the next level, I think that's where his game best fits. Now, again, that's just my opinion, but it's also about getting your best five, and Tosh Baker can't play guard. He's not a guard. He's 6'8", and he's more of an athlete. He's not a guard.
Sure.
So, yeah, I like where you're at, Mike. I like where you're at. Again, that's going to take some discussion, and that's going to take some convincing for Blake Fisher, right? But I like it.
Because playing left tackle at Notre Dame for 3 years, it can help you. Obviously.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know what else can help you is being an elite, dominant guard.
No question. Again, look at Quentin Nelson. He's got a perfect roadmap.
Quentin Nelson and Mike and Ronnie Stanley are the two highest drafted Notre Dame offensive linemen, and they were both picked 6th, right? And if you look at, the next highest was McGlinchey, who was a tackle at 9, and then the next highest was Zach Martin at 16. He was drafted as a guard.
That's right.
Now he played tackle in Notre Dame, but he was drafted as a guard. So I
it's an argument that can be made. It's an argument that can be made.
And that'd be one heck of a left side of your line. And I think you could even make an argument too, Mike, that maybe you put Fisher at the right side at guard and then Spindler left, so that you kind of mix up your two studs a little bit. But if they just wanted to put both of those guys on the left side, I'd be totally fine with that. That would be one heck of a – again, assuming that Tosh develops into a standout.
I think he will.
Because I think Tosh has to develop into more to just a regular. I think if Tosh is just a regular, then you put Blake Fisher back at left tackle.
Right.
But if Tosh develops and he's like, oh, he's as good as we thought he was going to be, then I think you need to consider moving Blake somewhere. Maybe it's right tackle and you put Joe Alt at guard.
Sure.
But I think it's something you need to figure out.
Go ahead and grab that super chat, Brian. Then I want to see if you can get up to where I'm at.
Sure. was the last one. Let's see
Should
here.
have just
You got
popped up.
Jacob Duns. Oh, there we go. Alex Udall. Oh, no, sorry. Wrong one. T. Stewart's got up there pretty quickly.
Alex says, my wife was born in Georgia and has family in Atlanta. Many Georgia fans in the family, and they were all upset in 2017 when Georgia wasn't allowed.
He's referring to the Georgia band.
I'm assuming he's referring to the band. Yeah. I don't remember that, but I'm sure that that's true. I mean, I'm sure that that's true. I just don't.
We've seen plenty of times where they haven't let the other bands in the stadium.
Sometimes
like you said, they don't let Stanford's in the stadium.
Well, yeah, that's because of all the stuff that they did.
Because they're just a classless group of people. And somebody asked why I don't like the Stanford band. That's it right there.
Look it up. It was an incident that went down. It was anti-Catholicism and all kinds of stuff that went down.
He's referring to the Bulldog. They did the same thing with Texas.
Oh,
they didn't let Devo in the stadium either. Yeah. He's talking about the Bulldog. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, he's saying when Uga. Okay, Uga wasn't allowed in the stadium.
Okay. It said UGA. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's our bad.
University of Georgia.
Yeah, he's talking about Uga. I wouldn't let. I mean, I guess I'm not a big fan of letting animals onto field turf. I get it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Can you scroll all the way up to 1245?
Let me see. Yeah.
Okay.
All the way up here with Liam Burke in math class again.
Oh.
I got to know, Liam, are you teaching a math class? Are you in school?
I think he's taking math, and I hope he's passing. I hope he's passing. I'm just going to say it.
6 + 1 = 7. Okay, that's a touchdown.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
No.
And spreads and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
I was on Griff is my next one. So I will pull that up, and that is where I'm going to take off, but I will read it anyway. Disappointed I can't make the tailgate, but look for me tomorrow at the Penn State Whiteout rocking my IB hat.
Nice. I got to know why you're at the Penn State game. Are you you got like a girlfriend from there? Do you go to school there? I'm very curious to find out why you're going to be at the Penn State game.
That's awesome.
But I'm good with it. I'm going to now be watching like commercials under the room. I'm like, where's IB at? Where's IB at? See? Yeah,
that's fantastic.
What are you doing?
All right, everybody. Hey, enjoy the game tomorrow. Remember, hit that notification bell because we will have a post-game show. Last time we came on around 7, so I would assume that would be similar this time around, but we'll see what happens. So make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when our post-game show will start. But, hey, looking forward to hopefully a big Notre Dame win, and we'll talk to everybody. I will talk to everybody tomorrow. Brian is going to carry on my wayward son.
Thanks, Vince. Tommy Gunn says this kind of feels like last season's first 3 games, a couple of projected big wins that ended up close. Then week 3 being projected closer, and boom, huge win. OC Irish fan, tailgate suggestion, built bars for dessert. Have a great time tomorrow at the pregame activities in the IB family. That's not a bad idea. I should have some built. You know what? I'm not going to have them for this time because I don't have a lot of extras, but I think that's a really good idea. I'm actually gonna. Yeah, that's a really good idea for our next tailgate. That's a really good idea because we just got we ordered some cookie doughs. They had like this 2-hour special. You could order cookie dough. Oh my gosh, my wife and I were like fighting about how many because I got them for her. She said she loves cookie dough. I'm not like a huge cookie dough. I mean, I eat it sometimes with ice cream, but I tried those like these are the best thing I've had in forever. So yeah. And then, of course, it was just like a 2-hour sale. I was like, next time they're doing that 2-hour sale, I'm like stocking up for the rest of the year on those things. So, yeah, we need to do something like that. Oh, and Tommy Guns, Vince can still see this. He's still here. He goes, Vince was talking about celebrating. He goes, especially since y'all were able to celebrate the Avery throw, which happened on the play I called in preseason. Vince, I was like, yes, Avery threw a pass. So, I mean, I was bummed they needed to burn that 2-point conversion play against friggin' Toledo. But hey, it is what it is. So yeah. Michael Johnson says, Vince and Brian, since the tight end blocking is subpar, can we use a fullback D lineman to block from the backfield? I just feel like if the tight ends can't block better, then just do more things where you're spreading out more. Number one. Number two, you need to get the tight ends blocking better. It's simple as that. I mean, Michael Mayer is too big and strong not to be blocking better than he is. They need to get that. They need to get that corrected quickly. Christopher said, I hope it's true, but I do not see how anyone could predict the Notre Dame wins big after what happened the first 2 games. Christopher, we said this real clearly yesterday, and I said it real clearly today. Nothing about what we've seen the first 2 games would lead me to believe that Notre Dame is going to do what I'm predicting. I made that very clear. So I don't know what else I can say besides nothing we've seen the first 2 games is going to make me predict this score. I said it very clearly, so I don't really know what else you want me to say. I explained why I predicted the game to be that way, and it's not based on what we've seen the first 2 games. But at the same time, if how Notre Dame played against Ball State and Vanderbilt was indicative of how they're going to play every game the rest of the year, then what happened against Stanford, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Northwestern, right? I mean, you're not locked in, okay, this is what they did the first 2 games, so that's who they're going to be for the rest of the year. That's not how football works. They're going to go one of 2 directions, either up or down. I'm predicting they're going to go up. And we'll find out tomorrow if they will or will not. Corey D said the Ohio State defense played terrible against the Ducks, and Ryan Day asserts that major changes will occur with the D. Our O-line is terrible, and BK says it's a player thing and says nothing about Quinn. Yep. Did you see Nick Saban just crush his team in the postgame press conference after they beat Mercer by 34 points? That's the difference. Nicholas Grosh asks, this is a good question. What individual matchups do we have to win tomorrow? I think they have to win the guard matchups. Have to win the guard versus D-tackle matchups. That is an absolute must. We talked about that in yesterday's show. And I think they need to win on the perimeter. I think Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey need to be the guys that we think they are. I think those are the 2. If I can only pick 2, I'm going to pick 2 just because I could then dive into tackles and tight ends. And just the top 2 to me, those would be it. Defensively, it's right up front. It's up front is where they have to dominate those matchups. If they can dominate the point of attack in this game, then Notre Dame's going to have a big day defensively. Purdue will get their plays here and there because David Bell's really good and the tight end's pretty good. But if they can dominate up front, they're going to win this game and win it convincingly. Martin Demo, he has his game prediction, 38-24 in favor of Notre Dame. And he says, if we lose, I'll feel as though the team will be deflated for the rest of the season. That's a concern. I mean, that's always a concern when you lose, especially to an inferior team, is how's your team going to respond? Hopefully we won't have to find out. Corey D says, from a media standpoint, is it wrong or inappropriate to ask BK about Jeff Quinn and why he's not getting the job done? It's not wrong or inappropriate. It's just you're not going to get an answer. Look, I have my frustrations with the media at times, and I've pretty much just checked out of asking Brian Kelly any questions, partly because I feel like since I'm not at the press conferences that it's not really, I don't know, I don't necessarily see the point in it because I can't follow up. When he doesn't answer the question the way I ask it, I can't follow up. But in defense of most of the media, people that I like and respect, like Tim Priester and Tim O'Malley, some guys like that, these guys are vets, and like me, they know what Brian Kelly's going to say. So do I ask him a question I know he's not going to answer, and then he's going to get mad and turn it into something it's not, or do I try to find a different way to ask the question? And that's the rub for, I think, the legitimate journalists in this business, in this beat are, it'd probably make the fan base feel better to say, hey, why isn't Jeff Quinn getting a job done, and what are you going to do about it? But he's not going to answer the question. He's going to go off and he's going to rip you and he's going to turn in this thing. And then the homers and the BK stands on fake Twitter will jump on those guys and all this other kind of stuff. Anytime you say anything that Notre Dame's not perfect, and then they just lose their minds. Or do you try to find different ways to say it? Or do you just do what I do and just say, hey, look, I don't care what Brian Kelly says. He is not going to do anything based on a question that I ask him at a press conference. He either sees it or he doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm responsible to you all. I'm going to tell you what I see. And it's simple as that. And I think other people are, hopefully do the same thing. AJ, if the offensive line plays how they've played in the first 2 games for the rest of the season, what will the team's final record be? AJ, if the offensive line plays this way for the rest of the year, they'll be at best a 9-3 team, in my opinion. Because I don't think, and there are teams on the schedule that I don't think have a shot to beat Notre Dame that I think could then beat. If Notre Dame's offensive line is just average against Wisconsin, they'll win that game. If they play the way they did against Toledo, then I'm more concerned about them losing that game, 17-10 or 13-10. If you play that way, Wisconsin, Cincinnati, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Virginia, to me, are all losable games. I don't, and USC's a wild card now they fired their coach. If the offensive line plays like this, you just beat Toledo by 3 and Florida State by 3. There's probably going to be at least 2-3 losses on your schedule at this point in time if you play like that. But I don't think they're going to play like that. Nicholas Grosh asks, how much are we missing Trimble in the run game and pass game? Do we have his replacement? They don't miss him in the pass game because they hardly ever used him in the pass game. They're missing him big time in the run game. Big time. Irish for Life says, I would feel better about the O-line this weekend if some of our past O-line stars came in and chewed some backside to light a fire under them. I don't know if that has to come. I think that there's a way to handle that. And I don't know if it's coming here and doing it. I think it's more like having some conversations with the leadership that you know and played with. Battery Boy asks, how can Patelho impact the defensive scheme tomorrow? Can he improve the effectiveness of our 3 down? So I know Vince talked about this. I had to actually step away for just a minute, so I didn't hear what he said. But I'll give you just my opinion. I think number one, I think that he brings a speed rushing ability as a pass rusher that they don't necessarily have. I think the pass rush has been very good, but it's been all speed guys. It's been all power guys. I think Foskey's more of a power guy. Myron's a power guy. Justin Ademiel is a power guy. I think Jordan brings just a come off the edge kind of guy. I think also he's more of a natural hybrid player, whereas like the Viper position as it's currently constructed is perfect for a player like him. Because, yes, he can play off the edge, but he can also come off the ball, play off the ball, drop into coverage a little bit more effectively, things like that. So I think he brings both of those attributes. And then I think hopefully it's also a situation where you can have him and Isaiah Foskey on the field together, especially on 3rd down. I think that would be something I would like to see. But can he improve the effectiveness of 3 down? If they're still doing it out of 4 down personnel, yes, I do. For what the reason I just mentioned. I think he's more natural about that. Coleman Smith asks, do y'all think Carmody is if healthy, should play guard or tackle? I mean, I think he's more natural at guard, but at the same time, you need tackles. I mean, if you move him to guard, who you have left to tackle? It's down to Tosh Baker, Josh Lugg, and what? Joe Alt? I mean, that's not a lot of bodies. And you're now another injury away from not having a 2 deep at tackle. So I think this year he kind of has to be a tackle at least until Blake Fisher comes back. I think you need to leave him there. I think ultimately I'd like to see him, if everybody's healthy, I'd like to see him move inside to play guard. But I think this week it's about getting Rocco some snaps. It's about getting Andrew Kristofic some snaps. I think those guys deserve an opportunity to play with how bad that the guards have been so far this season. AJ says, a Maureen Walker writing was on the wall. I agree with you. And it was since the summer. Coleman Smith asks, is Notre Dame recruiting Antonio Williams, the receiver from South Carolina? I don't know specifically that they're doing that. I haven't heard that. My fear is that that's the kind of guy. I haven't heard specifically that they're recruiting him again. I do know that they've reached out to him. I don't know what that means. But I don't – he's a nice player, but it's kind of like I felt like Nicholas Anderson. Like they're just – what does he bring that you don't already have? Nathan Lytle said, did Walker decommit? No, he's not decommitted yet. But all the question earlier was people asking about, the Michigan mods at 247 and Rivals are all, I guess, making predictions about him going to Michigan. Pat Kowaleski has a 2-part question. He says, number one, Kelly has said the importance of getting the top in-state talent, has said the importance, and we've had our fair share of guys, Jalen, Martin Brothers, Drew. But did guys like David Bell and Terry McLaurin even get offers? These are just 2 examples. But when you have the limited talent pool the state has, you would think it'd be easier to notice these guys. Did they get offered? So David Bell definitely got offered. Notre Dame wanted David Bell. They just couldn't get David Bell. And it's not for lack of effort. That wasn't going to happen. I think David liked Notre Dame. I know Notre Dame loved him. Brian Kelly made a personal trip to his high school. And he was one of those guys that I don't know how else to say that without making it seem like I'm taking a shot at the kid, but they weren't going to be able to get that one done. Not he didn't do anything wrong, not a bad kid, no trouble. Just he wasn't a fit at Notre Dame. If you kind of get what I'm saying on that one. Terry McLaurin, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with his recruitment to know what that one was about, to be honest with you. So I can't answer that one. Like George Karlaftis was just an evaluation mistake, and I'm not going to hammer Notre Dame for it because nobody's perfect. They didn't think he was a good enough player for what they want to do. Look, they got Isaiah Foskey in that class. He's pretty good. They got Nana in that class. They liked Nana better. I think at the time when they were juniors, I think Nana was probably the better prospect. George just kind of took off and became had a big jump as a senior. But he worked out at Notre Dame's camp. I sat there and watched him work out. He was not impressive. Mike Elko didn't think he was a great prospect. He thought he was a little stiff. George got better, and they missed out on him. It happens. But they try to get – there's a top 100 recruit who's an offensive lineman from Indianapolis, Kiante Goodwin. There's nothing Notre Dame can do about that one. They're not going to be able to get that kid. They just can't even recruit that kid. Not that he's a bad kid, just that ain't happening. And unfortunately, that happens a little bit more with kids from Indianapolis than it does with kids from Fort Wayne. Andrew Goss asks, is Notre Dame recruiting Southeast Polk tackle Caden Proctor? He's a 2023 offensive tackle. Yes, they are. And he recently released like a top 10 or 12, and Notre Dame was on it. He's a top target for them. Again, I don't know if they're going to get him. He's also, for those who don't know, a teammate of Xavier Nwankpa. But yes, they are definitely recruiting him. No question about it. He's a big – I saw him at the Columbus camp I went to this spring. That's a big kid, real big kid. Corey D says, Saban, Meyer, etc. surround themselves with smart people. They adjust, they adapt, they make the changes necessary to win big games. BK not addressing Dell or Quinn issue is unacceptable and wrong. I don't disagree with it. Beef's food review. Okay, here we go. Greatest YouTube channel of all time. IB is great. Please go check out and support my YouTube channel, Beef's Food Review. It would mean a whole lot. Go Irish, beat the Boilermakers. I'm curious, Beef's Food Review, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Do you go to different places that serve it? Do you talk about recipes? I'm curious about that because I do watch some food and cooking shows on YouTube because I like to cook. My wife and I made this really cool dinner the other night. It was rigatoni with marinara sauce and meatballs. I've never made meatballs before. It's the first time I made meatballs. I made meatballs with mozzarella inside. Very, very yummy. So I like to cook. It's a relaxing thing for me. It helps me take my mind off of everything else. Notre Dame 2164 asks, how good is Wisconsin's D-line? It's good. It's not great, but they're really well coached, and they play hard. Jim Leonard's a very creative defensive coach, and they play hard. Two bad things for the Notre Dame offensive line based on what we've seen the first two games. Hopefully that gets better. Patty asks, what do you think about number 3 for Purdue, over under 125 receiving yards? Irish need to put a lid on him in explosive plays. Number 40 running back is a Mark Edwards-looking guy. He's not bad either. David Bell is number 3. Like David Bell a lot. He's a very, very good football player. I said earlier this week, Patty, that I think he's as good as any receiver that Notre Dame's going to play this year, if not better. I really like him as a player. He's doesn't have great size, very shifty. They use him great. I really love how they use him. They'll put him outside. They'll put him in the boundary. They'll put him to the field. They'll put him in the slot. They do all those types of things. And he's a tough matchup. Over under 125 yards, I don't know. But you're correct. They need to put a lid on him in explosive plays. Number 40, Xander Horvath, is not playing in this game. So he was their starting running back. He had surgery this week. He is out for the game, so he will not play. Adam Blair says, hey, Brian, what do you think was the best overall team when healthy that could compete for a championship in the Brian Kelly era? I mean, look, as far as a team, based on how it was constructed, it was the 2017 team. I think that 2017 team, and I often wonder what happens if Brandon Wimbush doesn't get hurt against Wake Forest and his mind does his mind stay in a better place? Does he play better against Miami? I've often wondered that. What if Josh Adams doesn't get banged up down the stretch? I've often wondered that because that was probably the best team they had. Now, if I could kind of cheat and say if I could take this coaching staff with this team, I'd take the 2017 coaching staff and put it on the 2015 roster. If you could do that, Notre Dame could have competed for a title, and I think would have won a title. I truly believe that. Absolutely believe that. Benjamin Weiss says, has Marcus Freeman's teams in the past struggled with fundamentals? I know first couple of games and all that. I'm not panicking or anything. It's just something that I realized has never crossed my mind. I didn't watch a lot of his first year's team at Cincinnati, so I can't say. His last couple Cincinnati teams definitely didn't struggle with fundamentals. And I don't think this team is struggling with fundamentals. I think they lose their fundamentals on certain plays. It's not that they're just out there playing fundamentally unsound football, snap after snap after snap. I just think they're making some mistakes, and those mistakes. And look, when you make the kind of mistakes they're making in an aggressive defense, the result's going to be big plays. And for all the people talking about, Clark Lee's defense was designed not to give up big plays. Marcus Freeman is not obsessed with not giving up big plays. That doesn't mean he wants to give up the big plays they're giving up, because you don't want to make those mistakes. But you can live with that, because it's also going to make a lot of stops. The problem is, however, I think when they've gotten leads, they've gone away from that, and I want to see them keep that mentality. We got a super chat down here I want to get to. Appreciate that very much. From Felix Fournier. Hi, Brian. I'd like to see Chris Watt as our O-line coach. Quinn could stick around as an analyst to help with game planning and recruiting. Your thoughts? Number one, I don't know how much value Jeff Quinn would add as a recruiter, to be completely honest with you. I think that's one of the issues that I have with him. I look, somebody asked this on the message board the other day, and it's a good question. What would you say if they wanted to bring Chris Watt back as the O-line coach? I would say I would like it if it also meant you were bringing in someone as maybe a GA or an older person as an analyst. Like, if you could convince Harry Heastand to come back as an analyst and say, Harry, we'll pay you to break down film, but we're really there to help Chris with this. I'd be all for it. And that's what happened last year. Chris was a GA, but Coach Heastand helped him out. He was there. He had his back. He helped him, work through things and gave him pointers and gave him advice. And I think that was very valuable. I think that I don't know if Jeff Quinn would be the guy you'd want to be that advice guy, because I don't think he's that great of an offensive line coach. So would I be okay with that if it meant that and let's say it's not Harry Heastand, let's say it's somebody else. Let's say it's some other retired O-line coach, something like that. Yeah, I'd be totally fine with that. If it's just Chris Watt and Jeff Quinn, I don't know. I would necessarily love that, because I don't know what value Jeff Quinn would bring at that point in time for an offensive line standpoint. Now, look, I think Jeff Quinn has a role in this football team. I do. It's just, especially as an analyst, but I don't know if it's as an analyst in a role where he's overseeing the offensive line. I also don't know how much Jeff Quinn would be okay with that, to be honest with you. Benjamin Weiss says, Paul Moala being out is a huge moment. If Prince Colley can go in there and do a great job for the Irish, I think BK might see fit to make a major philosophical shift on playing freshmen. I don't know if Colley's going to play this weekend. He's been out the last couple weeks with COVID. I'm not sure what his status is for this weekend's game. But Benjamin, they haven't really had an issue playing freshmen on defense. And the reality is Brian Kelly's just not as involved in the defense, which is fine. I mean, he shouldn't be. He's been more of an offensive focused coach, and you hire guys to do the job. I mean, Notre Dame's played a decent amount of freshmen the last couple of years on defense. Myron Tungavaloa and Kurt Heinisch all played a bunch as freshmen. You look at linebacker, you've had some guys kind of get some snaps as freshmen, but more so as they get older. But secondary wise, Kyle Hamilton played as a freshman. Tariq Bracy played as a freshman. Houston Griffith was a starting nickel for a big chunk of his freshman year. We've seen Jason Adamiola played as a freshman. We've seen these guys. We've seen more guys on defense play as freshmen than we have on offense. I don't think it's been as big of an issue. Bo Bauer and Shane Simon both played as freshmen on special. They were special team starters, used in a year of eligibility as special team starters on special teams, which is not a complaint, by the way. It's just statement of fact. So I don't think that would really impact it. It's more of an offensive thing, Benjamin. It has been more of, yeah. Chad Williams says, I'm curious to know why you guys are so optimistic about Notre Dame covering. Can you point to 3 things that you think Notre Dame can hang their hat on to cover? See, Chad, I don't look at it that way. I mean, look, I've said from the beginning of the show, I don't look at this from a gambling standpoint. I don't care about gambling. I don't care about spreads. I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm just looking at this as analysis of the game. It's not about optimistic about Notre Dame covering. It's just, look, I made a prediction. I said, based on what you've seen the first 2 games, this is going to be a competitive game. If Notre Dame keeps playing that way, it's going to be a tight game. What I have said, and we did a whole, you want to know, like, what are 3 things? Watch the last 2 shows we did. I explained the things. I think that the offensive line is going to come out and play harder. I think that's going to then, if that happens, then it's going to give Jack Cohn more time to throw the football, which then puts the Notre Dame skill players in more isolations against Purdue in matchups so they can go make plays. The only hope Purdue has tomorrow to keep Notre Dame's offense under 40 points, in my opinion, is beating Notre Dame up front. If the offensive line does, let's just say they have that breakout game and they get on track and they slow down Purdue's offensive line, they get some decent movement in the run game, protect the quarterback. Notre Dame will throw the ball and run the ball all over Purdue. They have way better players. On the other side of the ball, Notre Dame's defensive line has been a strength of this team so far this year, and Purdue's got a bad offensive line. The difference is Notre Dame's offensive line should be better. Purdue's is what it is. It just isn't very good outside of Gus Hardwick. And they have, to me, a really good player in David Bell. The rest of their skill players are solid players. They're, the tight end's pretty good. They're down their running back. I just don't think if Notre Dame plays their game, that their quarterback's going to have the opportunities to go and make plays. Look, the first 2 games, teams have not just been moving the ball up and down the field in this Notre Dame defense with ease when they're in their normal situations. Florida State wasn't moving the ball effectively on Notre Dame until they went away from their base defense. Early in the game, their only 2 plays were on their scores were on 2 plays. They had 2 big plays. That was it. Same thing with Toledo. You take away those 2 big plays, Toledo does nothing against Notre Dame last Saturday. You got to clean that stuff up, right? That stuff matters. Purdue's good enough to beat you. But if the defensive line's playing their game, they're not just going to consistently move the ball up and down the field. If they don't play their game, then that's where, like we've seen at times the last 2 games, and it's going to be a closer game. What I'm saying is, just because this is what Notre Dame has been the first 2 games doesn't mean that's what they're going to be for the rest of the year. That's never happened at any time I've ever seen. You either go up or you go down. And I predict they're going to go up. So about covering, it's not about covering. I don't care. I didn't gamble in this game. I've never gambled on a college football game. I'm looking at this from a matchup standpoint and saying, if Notre Dame plays their game, this is what will happen. I don't know if they're going to play their game or not, which is why I don't bet on sports. If I could figure that out, then I would bet and I'd make a lot of money and I'd still be doing this because I like doing this, but I'd be doing this for a hobby, not for my profession, because I'd have millions of dollars and all that kind of stuff. So it's not about gambling. It's Notre Dame's the better team. They have the better players. They're at home. If they play their game, they'll win comfortably. If they don't play their game, the offensive line plays sloppy, the defense gives up big plays, and they're out of position, then it'll be a much more competitive game, just like it was the first 2 weeks. Herney's 777. I'm curious if you think Buckner can play in the pocket. Yes. Is he ready to be a pure pocket player tomorrow? No, it's not there yet. When Tyler Buckner finally gets to the point where he's kind of really got a full grasp of the offense, can he sit in the pocket and pick you apart? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Chief Brody. Okay, I haven't watched Rudy yet this season. That's probably why they're playing poorly. I had the same thought last night. So my wife and I moved into this house in December of 2016, so right before the 2017 season. Since that time, I have watched the movie Rudy before the season starts every year, except for this year. This is the first time I did it. So it is our fault that this has happened. I'm going to watch Rudy tonight, however. Hopefully that rectifies this problem. Curtis Hewitt says, I hope the stadium is packed Saturday. Do you anticipate more fans of the game? I was kind of disappointed in the turnout against Toledo. I would hope so. I just hope. Here's my fear, Curtis. My fear is the stadium is packed, but it's because a lot of Purdue fans take those empty seats. That's my fear. I don't know why there was only 62,000 people in the stadium last week. I've heard people point to, COVID and things like that, but I'm looking at Notre Dame's 77% capacity, and I'm looking at Georgia was 100%, Bama was 94%, Ohio State was in the 90s. I'm trying to think. Did I say Georgia was in the? It was like 100%. I mean, there's all these teams in parts of the country where COVID is just in Indiana, and their stadiums were full, and there's bigger stadiums. So I think for some people, it definitely is COVID. I'm sure it is for some people, but I think there's more to it than just COVID. I do, because the number, like their numbers. So Notre Dame was at 77% capacity. USC was at 73. The fact that Ohio State was in the 90s, Michigan was in the 90s. The fact that Notre Dame was closer to what the numbers were for USC than what we saw, which has really tough restrictions on those things. The fact that they were closer to that than they were to those other powerhouse programs, to me, says that while COVID may have been a part of the problem, or not the problem, part of the reason, it wasn't the entire reason. And, will it be different this week? I don't know. I really don't know. I hope it is. And if it is, then yeah, I really don't want to make too many comments beyond that, because I don't know what that would mean. I mean, I was puzzled. I was concerned by it, and it was definitely a concerning thing. I'm actually trying to look up here to see where Michigan was. I thought I saw that Michigan was in the 90s, but now I'm thinking I may not have actually looked at the Michigan game, so I don't want to give bad information out. So I'm looking here to see what the stadium capacity was for Michigan. Michigan it's saying here the attendance was full capacity, 108,000. Michigan was sold out. So I don't know. AJ, two-part question. Number one, the offensive line possibly even more concerning next season. Someone pointed out another podcast that if you subtract Patterson, Madden, Lugg from the line, they will return fewer starts next season than this year. As a fan, it is maddening when the program is as close as it has been in a long time, and there's still a couple of glaring issues. It's even more problematic when it's the offensive line. That's not a position the Notre Dame can afford to take a step back on. You just can't. And yeah, it's problematic. I think I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would. I think that stat that I don't know what podcast gave that. That's a little bit of a misleading stat though, because Caden Madden has a ton of starts under his belt, but it's all at Marshall. And as I said when they signed him, all snaps aren't created equal. And I don't view Caden Madden as his 30-some career snaps as starts is the same as like Jarrett Patterson or Liam Eichenberg, because he did them at Marshall. So yeah, you take those guys out, you lose a lot of experience, but Michael Carmony's going to get a lot of experience this year. Blake Fisher, Tosh Baker, Andrew Kristofic hopefully gets some snaps this year. Zeke Carell's going to get a lot of snaps this year. Hopefully Rocco Spindler gets some snaps this year. So you're going to have guys that are going to play, but here's the thing. There's going to be more talent next year. I don't care who plays guard next year. He's going to be more physically talented than Caden Madden. Is he going to be as experienced or strong? We'll see. Certainly going to be more talented. So, I guess I look at it differently just from a talent standpoint. But again, the problem next year is going to be the same as the problem this year. It's not a player problem. The problem this year is not a player problem. The problem next year is not going to be a player problem. It is a coaching problem, a development problem. You fix that, and you fix the offensive line. And that doesn't mean firing somebody, but just demand somebody do a better job, and hopefully they will do a better job. There's some drum comments here that I'm just gonna leave there for your enjoyment. So Michael Johnson says, if Franklin leaves Penn State, can Notre Dame flip some players? We got asked this earlier, Michael. I think that I would definitely look to flip Nicholas Singleton, and I would look to I would try to flip Drew Shelton. Those are the two guys I would want to go after. I would really want to see them go after them. Chris Thompson says, love you guys. Go Irish. Thank you, Chris, very, very much. The feeling is mutual. Patty says, play calling hasn't been a problem at all. So far, I agree with that. Chris Thompson says, play calling has been great. The O-line has been trash. They need to step up. I agree. Chad Williams says, Notre Dame is not going to commit to the run with Jack Cohn. Their run game is incorporating Buckner. They've run 23 zone reads with Cohn, and he's given the to the back every time. You're assuming that they're running zone read. I have to think that they're not actually running zone read, and they're just hoping that his action can fool that. Hopefully that changes, and hopefully I'm wrong on that, and he's going to start pulling. But I'm going to push back on your first comment. I would say that it's not about committing to the run. They ran the ball. They had their two backs carried the ball 25 times against Florida State. They were over 20 times last week. They're committed to the run. They're just not good at it right now. And I don't think you should have to live with zone reads as your thing. And it's not all those are zone reads either. Some of those are RPOs where he's going to pull and throw, or should pull and throw. The problem, however, is because your line's getting their butts kicked, teams are playing tight with their coverage. You break down the games, you see it. They play tight coverage. They're taking away some of those RPOs, those quick game RPOs, because they're playing up, because they're not afraid of the Notre Dame run game. They're handling the Notre Dame run game with the box, and that's limiting some things. Now, what Notre Dame needs to do is they need to figure out some ways they can throw the ball to protect the run game. In past years, it's been the run game sets up the pass. This year, the pass game is going to have to set up the run, and it's going to require them to give Jack Cohn more options in the run game on what to do with the ball, including he's going to have to pull. To your point, he's going to have to pull. He does that 2-3 times, runs for 8 to 12 yards, and just slide. I don't care. But they're going to have to do that at some point in time. But they also need to figure out some more things to do with the RPO game as well. Irish Cubby says, it's hard to say a play is good or not when the line gets blown up. I think Cohn and Reese have been good considering. Agree. John Malone says, it has been mentioned that North Carolina's O-line was bad last year, but their scheme allowed for a successful offense. Does that give us hope, or is our O-line really that terrible? Sorry if I already addressed. So, John, I think you're misunderstanding what we've said. We've never said the line was bad last year. We said it wasn't an elite line. There's no high NFL draft picks. What we did say is we thought that line just played well together. Like, they did their job, and the scheme allowed and the talent of the backs and the talent of the team allowed them to still be very, very successful. It wasn't that they were bad. It's just they're not talented like Notre Dame, and they don't have those elite players. Now, they were bad against Virginia Tech, but they weren't bad last season. I hope that makes sense. And so, look, Notre Dame will be fine on the offensive line if they do a better job preparing in preparation and coaching. It's that simple. It can be fixed correctly, and I hope it does. And Jeff Quinn is going to need to do it, right? But it doesn't give you hope, because it's not about them being bad. It's just North Carolina's offensive line, they executed their job. That's what they did. They did their job. They didn't do it dominantly. They didn't do it. They just did their job. And then the skill could take over. So it's not a direct comparison. Irish Cubby says, yeah, even with Cohn's speed, if he pulls some of these reads at 6 to 10 yard runs. Now, wait a minute. I'm confused, because Brian Kelly said all summer and fall camp about how athletic Jack Cohn is, and he's a surprisingly athletic player, and he can legitimately run, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not sure why all of a sudden he's an immobile guy. A little sarcasm there. Chris Phillips, I like this. Hey, guys, I think we scored 10 points on defensive takeaways. Prayers coming for your mom. Thank you for that, Chris. Loving your show up here in Michigan. Go Irish 42-21. I love all that. I'm with all that. I like all that stuff. Michael Johnson has some advice for Rob Didoff. He says, use your air miles for free Wi-Fi. Corey D says, with an average to slightly above average offensive line, is this a playoff team? Yes. Assuming the defense can clean up just a couple things. Yes, I think so. Look, I could be off base here, right? I'm just giving you my opinion. My opinion is the skill is really good at Notre Dame. The quarterback play is really good at Notre Dame. It's the line. If the line plays better, just solid average of slightly above average football, this team's going to score a lot of points. That's what Clemson was in 2018, and more so in 2016. Their offensive line in 2018 was better than their 2016 line. I should probably say it wasn't average. It was an above average line, but they played well together. Above average from a talent standpoint. It was a really good line in how they played, but from a talent standpoint, it wasn't great. Well, that kind of balances because I think Notre Dame has a lot of talent, but they don't necessarily play great. The 2016 offensive line at Clemson was just kind of mediocre. It was just solid. They just did their job. They weren't anything special, but they had great skill around the quarterback, who was great. And, of course, the result was a national championship both years. So I don't think the Notre Dame offensive line has to be phenomenal for this team to be good. The way that Tommy Rees is calling plays, the skill talent that they have, and I think the defense is going to get a lot better. So is it a playoff team? Well, it has a good chance to be one. Terry Howe, the great point. Tomorrow's game is going to tell us what kind of O-line we have because there will be no more excuses. 25% of the schedule played is plenty enough of a body of work. Agree completely. Got a super chat from John A1. Hopefully Notre Dame offensive line does its job tomorrow. Who's been the most consistent offensive player so far, in your opinion? Most consistent offensive player so far, I'd probably have to go with Kevin Austin. Just because I think he's been pretty good in the run game. He's been pretty good in the pass game. I think he's just done his job. He's making tough plays. Michael Mayer certainly has been really, really good in the pass game, but his run blocking has been kind of disappointing so far. I'd probably go with – because, Kyron has had some mistakes, had the big fumble. Tyree's been good. He's been pretty steady. Lindsey's been pretty steady when given the opportunity. Austin's been probably the best of the – doing it all around. Line-wise, Jarrett Patterson was pretty good against Purdue, not very good against Florida State. So consistency so far through 2 games, I'd probably say Kevin Austin. Isn't that crazy? Kid's had 6 career catches, hasn't played in 2 years, and he's been their most consistent player, which I think says a lot about him. Sean McArdle says, Coach D, love the recruiting comparison with Purdue. More, please. And our O-line doesn't suck for lack of talent, it appears. You are not wrong. Now, that is something that is going to be a regular featured Irish Breakdown. I did it for the Florida State game as well. I didn't do it for Toledo because it's just kind of useless to do it against a MAC team. It doesn't really get the point across that I'd like to get across. But that's going to be a regular early week feature moving forward. And now, like I said, I didn't do it for the Toledo game for a couple of reasons. Number one, because everything was thrown off that week. But number two, it wouldn't have proven anything. But we're definitely going to see that moving forward. Got another super chat down here from Martin Nefel. I appreciate that, Martin, very, very much. No comment, just a super chat. I appreciate that very, very, very much. All right, let's get down here to some more questions. Hopefully I didn't get bumped down too far. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. Corey D says, why does Notre Dame's receiver struggle with yak? I watch Ohio State and Bama receivers, and they are running all over the place, making plays. Notre Dame big plays are typically throwing it up to Austin one-on-one situation. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think part of the issue is just that's where the plays have been so far. I mean, Kevin Austin's had a couple plays where he's made yards after the catch. A lot of stuff that Ohio State and Clemson do, it's a different type of system. I would like to see more of the levels. Again, I don't think it's a receiver problem. I would like to see more levels concepts where Notre Dame receivers are catching the ball on the run. I mean, that's usually when those receivers are doing things. You look at for example, the big play that 2 of the big plays that Chris Olave had against Minnesota that were yards after catch. It was drag routes. He's catching the ball across the field. Well, you need some time for that. On one of them, it was the quarterback scrambling and getting the ball downfield. I think you need some time for that. The line hasn't been given Notre Dame a lot of time to let some of those routes develop where that guys can catch the ball on the run. I think you do some more of that, then it'll be there. But I also think that is one of the things about this offense that I do think needs to be evolved a little bit is, and we talked about this earlier in the week too, Corey, is, some more levels concepts that allow you to kind of get some guys on the run. You'll get some crossing routes on the run. If they're going to crash with their linebackers, replace him with a Braden Lindsey and Avery Davis or Lorenzo Styles. Let Lorenzo catch that sucker and just use his speed. Let Braden catch that thing and use his speed. Certainly think those are things that they can do. It's not a lack of receiver problem. It's just based on how the offense has gone in 2 games, that's been an issue. I mean, but look, you had Kyron Williams making a catch and, screen play turn into a 55-yard gain. That's yak in the pass game. Kyron Williams caught a screen for, behind the line of scrimmage and converted a 3rd and 15 this past week. That's yak. Well, the receivers aren't getting the balls in those situations, and I think they need to. But part of the issue is it's kind of hard to do that when the team is playing up so close because they're not respecting your run game. And, there's not a lot of room to catch the ball and run. And then you say, well, okay, the room to catch the ball and run is now behind that. It's on the second and third level. Well, you don't have time to get the ball down there. And so teams are playing smart defensively because they don't respect the run. Run the ball more effectively, force teams to put more emphasis on stopping the run, and those things will open up more. Michael Johnson said Florida State didn't allow Notre Dame's ban. David Knight has a good comment. Various routes affect the yak. If you don't get it in space, you ain't going to get yak. You ain't getting any yak. I agree completely. John Klimek also, they don't catch the ball on the run. Jump ball, stops, and sitting in the zone. Now they're doing stuff like, okay, so for example, here's a perfect example, okay? They ran a play against Purdue, and we talked about this in one of the earlier shows this week. They ran a seam route with Avery Davis. They're bringing Braden Lindsey on a deep end cut. If Avery Davis doesn't get jammed, and if Jack Cohn has, even if he does get jammed, Jack Cohn has more time, but especially if those two things happen, Avery Davis is running an in cut. Jack Cohn hits him over the middle of the field, and he takes off running. You'd have seen yak, but the offensive line didn't give him that time. There's been a couple plays like that where if Jack Cohn gets more time, he's got a guy running on a route where there would have been some yak. Now, they're more down the field things as opposed to the short crossers, and I like to see some more of those short crossers worked in. But we saw Joe Wilkins catch a short cross and turning it into a 14-yard yank. You take a 2nd and 15 and turn it into a 3rd and 1, and most of that was done after the catch. So we're seeing some of it. We're just not seeing enough of it. And a lot of it, as people have pointed out to, has to do with the play of the offensive line. T. Stewart says this game goes as the O-line goes, especially Tosh Baker. I think it's more about the guards for me, T. Stewart. I do. But your point is absolutely correct. Curtis Hewitt says, Vince, Brian, if Purdue and Toledo played right now, who wins? I'm sorry. I read it as he wrote it. I'm sorry. Brian, if Purdue and Toledo played right now, who wins? Just kind of want your opinions on that. I think Purdue is the better team, in my opinion, and Notre Dame's a better team than Toledo. A lot of it's about matchups, and I think Purdue would win that game. Absolutely. Got a super chat down here from Lee Gannon. Just a chat, just a donation to the site, and I appreciate that very, 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 very much, Lee. Very much. All right, let's find some more questions. Indy fan 8807 says, why hasn't Takis been targeted in the passing game yet? That's a good question. We talked about that earlier in the week as well. There was a play where they were going to throw to him, but Tyler Buckner got I can't remember what happened on the play, but they had called Tyler Buckner gave the ball instead of pulling it and getting outside and throwing it. They were trying to bring Takis on a drag route. But I agree with you. They're going to have to get him more involved in the pass game just to make teams respect that out of their 12 personnel. Agree completely. RJG Irving says, to me, Botelho also brings a real edgy, a bit nasty on-field persona. I think a little of that is needed this week. I think a little of that's needed every week. I think that's a great point, RJ. Great point. Terry Howie says, hey, Brian, late joining the show today. How's your mom doing? Prayers for your mom. I appreciate that very much. She's still in the hospital, probably going to be there, I think she said, till Tuesday, and they're trying to figure out just when she was going to need surgery, but she's better spirits and doing better every day. She's not in any pain right now, so that's a good thing as well. So she's doing a lot better. Appreciate that. Appreciate the prayers from you and everybody else very much. Rob Didoff says, Brian and Vince, is there one thing you are looking for right away tomorrow to know progress is made in practice this week for the O-line? Physicality. That's it, Rob. It's really that simple. Are they coming off and just smacking Purdue? You see that, and I'll feel good. I'll say, okay, I got a chance to do something here. I really will. Jeff DeMonk says, if Notre Dame's front four cannot get enough pressure on the quarterback, do you think blitzing puts our DBs in a position that they cannot cover effective enough one-on-one to be effective? Go Irish, beat Purdue. That's a concern of mine, yes. If they have to blitz to get pressure on the quarterback, that puts them in some situations because you have players like David Bell who are good enough to beat guys one-on-one, even good players, because he's really, really good. And look, you can't cover a guy every play, every snap if he's that good. He's going to get open at times. And then Jeff Brom is a great play caller and play designer. He's going to do some things to get him going. Your hope is to dominate the line of scrimmage. And they don't have a good line of scrimmage. Their offensive line is not good. This is a game where Notre Dame should be dominating up front. If they don't, that's problematic in a lot of ways. But for this specific matchup, it means Purdue's going to score some points. Battery Boy says it's a huge get-right game day tomorrow. Why is everyone talking about the opposing school's bands? I agree. Trey McIntosh, I can see how players like Josh Burnham, Jordan Patel, or Dalen Hayes could play that middle linebacker position over in a three-man front. I do not see how Isaiah Foskey gives an advantage from playing off the line. So Troy, I'm going to somewhat disagree with you, but also agree with you. Where I agree with you is I don't think he can play as a MLB, right? So you kind of said two different things here. As far as playing that linebacker position, sometimes it was like a lineup kind of like a Will, sometimes it was like a Mike, and he was asked to kind of read and react, and I don't like that. I agree with you completely. I think Dalen Hayes would have been great at that. I think Jordan Patelho could be really good at that. I think Josh Burnham could be really good at that, obviously, because he is a linebacker who could then maybe also go play rush off the edge. I think for me, it's more of I like the notion of Isaiah Foskey playing off the ball, but I like it in a way where you're using him in different places to attack. And I'll be willing to bet you, Troy, that you're going to agree with this because of comments you've made in the past and this comment. I like how you look at the game. So for me, I don't like him as a linebacker. I do like the idea of in a three-man front and moving him around and saying, hey, we're going to bring him off the edge this play. We're going to bring him off the other edge that play where you're bringing him and Myron off the same edge sometimes. I'm going to have him crash the middle. There's plays where they had him off ball against Toledo where they at the snap, they just crashed him hard. He was blowing guards up, just driving in the backfield, and the running back has to bounce off of him and go around him. And by that point in time, J.D. Bertrand was there eating it up. That's where I like him. But I don't view that as like a linebacker. I do think he's off ball, off the line. But he's not playing linebacker. He's just moving him around to attack from different angles. That I like. Asking him to read, react, step, flow, chase the ball. Nope, can't do that. If you're going to have him off the ball, attack with him. If Isaiah Foskey's not coming off the line hard and fast, that's a you problem as a coach. And obviously, I'm not talking about him being lazy. That's not what I'm talking about. If he chooses not to run, that's on him. That's not what we're talking about here. We haven't seen that from Isaiah. I'm talking about if you're asking him to not do anything other than just then that's a you problem, not an Isaiah Foskey problem. And I'm not saying that you said that it was. Tommy Guntz is headed to South Bend now. Look forward to meeting up with you tomorrow. T. Stewart says if our line was decent, Jack would be a de facto Heisman candidate just based on stats alone. Best three deep at the skill position that I've seen since a third-string quarterback came into the 1977 Notre Dame Purdue game. I like that Joe Montana reference there. John A1 says, in 2 games, how does the Notre Dame defensive line stack up with other elite defensive lines? I can't really say that because I haven't paid enough attention to what other lines are doing right now, John. But I will say this. If you look at the production that Notre Dame defensive line has had so far, it's been outstanding. And that includes the fact that they missed several sacks in the opener. But as I pointed out the other day, right now Notre Dame is on pace for 123.5 tackles for loss and 65 sacks. You've got Isaiah Foskey has 3 sacks already. Myron Tungavaloa has 2. Jason Adamiola, Riley Mills, Kurt Heinisch, and Justin Adamiola all have a sack so far. They have 19 sacks on the year. They're on pace for 65. That's tackles for loss. Sacks-wise, those were tackles for loss. Sacks-wise, Foskey's got 3. Myron's got 2. Mills, Heinisch, Adamiola, both Adamiolas all have sacks already. And when I look at it, here's what I see. I see a team that's on pace for a tackle for loss finish that would blow away anything they've ever done under Brian Kelly by like 31.5 tackles for loss. That would set a new Brian Kelly high. I'd have to look at what the all-time team high is, which is kind of misleading because they didn't always keep sack numbers. But a modern day would be a modern day 65 sacks, a modern day record for Notre Dame. I'd have to think it is. I can't think of a time they've ever come close. And the defensive line is a driving force behind a lot of that. That ranking of tackles for loss would rank no lower than third nationally in the last decade, and would have led the nation. I think the number I looked at was like 5 times. And the 65 sacks would lead the nation every year since Brian Kelly's been in Notre Dame. When you're having that kind of production, your line's playing really well. There's things they got to clean up to eliminate the big plays, but this is what I keep telling people. There's been about 4 or 5 big plays, and I'd probably say about 5 or 6 other plays where you're like, man, they just got to clean that up. But there's been a lot more just dominant plays. Clean up the mistakes, and all of a sudden this defensive line is going to start getting the recognition it deserves for how well it's playing so far this year. Craig Sebring has a prediction. He has Notre Dame winning 35-20. It's very close to Vince's score from yesterday. Terry Howie says we have to win the turnover battle. David Knight with good wishes to all of you. Any of you traveling tomorrow, stay safe and prayers are with you. God bless. Thank you for that, David. Terry Howie says, I hate that Kelly doesn't allow access to the other coaches. Is it a trust issue? No, I think he's loosened up on that a lot. And he allowed me to do, for example, have Tommy Reese and Marcus Freeman on our podcast this summer. To me, it's a control issue. Brian Kelly likes being the face of the program, and that's okay. We don't hear much from Nick Saban's coordinators either. I would like to see it with this current group. I think part of this is we used to get the coordinators all the time, and that kind of went away because Bob Diaco just, I don't know if this is why, but I'd have to think it was. Bob Diaco said a lot of weird things. And I just think it kind of created a headache. I think you have to be careful of who your coaches are. I don't know if Clark Lee would have been a guy you wanted doing that, because I don't know how much Clark would have liked that. I think Chip Long was pretty good in an interview for him. I think Tom Maurice is surprisingly good in an interview for him. Surprising just because his youth as a coach, but maybe not so surprising if you think about it, because he was a quarterback in Notre Dame. He has been in front of the camera a lot. I think Marcus Freeman would be very good at it. So I would like to see more of that. I would like to see more coaches being available to the media than players, to be honest with you. Players have to be out there. The Notre Dame quarterback has to be at almost every post game. He has to be at almost every weekday thing. Why not the coordinators? I think we should see more of that. Garrett Medford says, continuity from a coaching standpoint is huge. A scheme change on defense in a year to go along with turnover for the NFL was bound to show the defense will be fine. I agree. Michael Scheller. Hi, hey, Michael, good to hear from you. Hey, Brian, sorry I'm late to the IB party, and you may have already discussed these questions, but why has Prince Collie been unavailable to play? And any news on Cedric Irvin decision? Thanks. Prince Collie's has had COVID-related things. I don't know if he's sick or if it's contact tracing. I would assume it's a direct test for him, but that's why he has been unavailable. I don't have any new intel on the Cedric Irvin decision beyond what's already out there. So I have not had a chance to speak with anybody about that. I know he's got a decision coming up, I believe, next week. And there's a lot of people that think Notre Dame's a good position. I'm not sure where they stand on that. We'll have to find out here pretty soon. So Tommy Gunn says, Brian, thinking about the O-line, kick Patterson out the left tackle and slide the left side down one spot. I would have done this. I would have done this during the summer. I really would have. It's what I would have liked personally. I understand why they didn't do it. Blake Fisher was playing at a very high level. I think that the reason that they went away from it then is why they're not going to go to it now. The reality is that I don't know if taking Patterson away from your interior right now makes a lot of sense. And I've been back. I mean, some shows I'm saying I like the idea, others I'm not. I'm back and forth on it because there's just so much certainty around it. And when you look at the offensive line, as bad as they've been up the middle, the one bright spot is how Jared Patterson played last week. Do you really want to take that away? I don't know if that's going to really work out well for you. But I understand where you're coming from, Tommy. It's just that interior concerns me. Chad Williams says Karlaftis had a terrible Irish invasion. Correct. Corey D says, is Notre Dame still recruiting Xavier Bradshaw? Barely. I mean, like, according to him, they rarely talk to him. Liam Gaming says, any word on how the young guys like G or et cetera are doing? Honestly, Liam, once the season starts, I stop asking about young kids. I'm more concerned about guys who are going to play. I think Kari's probably a year away from being a factor and possibly pushing for a spot. Ron Ginther says, I know you think Wagner's floor is low, but what's his ceiling? So let's just say hypothetically that Amari Wagner can get to 300 pounds and play like a 300-pounder. I think his ceiling is that of a top 100 recruit. I really do. I think his ranking is accurate. He's a top 100 recruit by 2 services. That's accurate if you could guarantee me that he can fill out to be at least 295. At least 295 and play that at that weight. I mean, maybe 290, but play it that way. You know, Robert Hainsey was 290 to 295 most of his career. Zach Martin was barely 300 pounds in Notre Dame. And sometimes that was more late in his career. But I just don't see that body type, Ron. I see a kid that, I mean, I've seen pictures of him standing next to like linebackers. And I'm like, he has the same body type as them. He doesn't have the body of an offensive lineman. He just doesn't. I don't see it. And if I'm wrong and he comes to Notre Dame, which I don't think he's going to do, I don't know if he's a take for Notre Dame right now, and he can fill out, he's got a chance to be a really good player. I don't think that's the risk that you can take in this class. Garrett Medford says, how do you feel about moving wide receivers around, such as Austin or Lindsey in the slot, to create more opportunity to read the defense pre-snap and allow more favorable matchup from explosive players? I love it. I would love to see more of that. I'm a big proponent of that. I've written articles about that. I think Alabama at least last year, did a great job of that. You never knew where Devontae Smith is going to line up. I think you got to do it. You have to do it. And like you said, the matchups alone give you opportunities, but it's going to keep teams honest. And I don't think Notre Dame does enough to keep teams honest. As good as Tom Maurice's play calling has been, I do think there's merit to doing more of this to create even more mismatches. I think that is something that could help his play calling even better and make the offense even better. D-Rock says, just got back from another 7.2-mile hike in North Carolina. Goodness. I hope it's just the mountain air talking yesterday in my game prediction for tomorrow. Yeah, I hope so too, man. I was bummed to see you pick Purdue to win, but hey, this is a place where we're objective and we give our honest opinion, so there's no issue with that. Paul Hamilton said, Tommy Rees seemed afraid to let Tyler Buckner drop back and throw. How close do you think Tommy Rees is to adding that to the Buckner package? I don't think it had to do with fear. It's just about how much do you want to put on the kid in his first career appearance. I mean, look, first drive of the game, they had him drop back and he's going to throw a bomb. What happened? He got hit because he couldn't protect him. Do you really want to put a freshman in that position? I don't think you do. And I understand where you're coming from, Paul, but I don't think that's what you do, because if you're going to have him to sit back and drop back all day, then just let Jack Cohn stay in the game. The whole point of putting in Tyler Buckner is to utilize the parts of his game that are different from Jack Cohn's. Putting him in and just dropping back and letting him throw, and I'm not saying you're saying every play, I'm just making a point, to me doesn't add the value to your offense yet. It will in time, but not yet. I have a super chat down here from Brandon. Good to see you back, Brandon. Brian just got here. Curious as to what type of food will be at the tailgate tomorrow. Can't wait to see everybody. Go Irish. So obviously it will not be nearly as good as it would have been if my mom was catering it. Because as I said yesterday, my mom cooks really well. And I said family, everybody, like we had my mom make a lot of the food for our wedding. Not all of it, because I wanted her to, be part of it, like her and my family, because I've come from a family of people that know how to cook on my mom's side. I don't know about my dad's side. I don't know if I've really been with them many times when they've cooked. But my mom's side cooks a lot, and my mom's the best cook in my family. So it would have been really good. But we're going to have barbecue pork sandwiches. We're going to have fried chicken. We're going to have some chips. I'm going to have a veggie tray, have some watermelon. That's more for me because I love watermelon. But if you do too, you can have some. And we'll have water. We'll have some pop. We'll have some things like that. It's going to be not a ton. Hopefully you're not coming. If you're coming just from the food, you're probably going to be disappointed. I'm just want to come and meet everybody and talk and those kind of things. So hopefully that's why you're coming. Because if it's about the food, you're probably going to be disappointed. P Money Official, thank you for the super chat. And Brandon, thank you for the super chat as well. But P Money Official, thank you for the super chat. What do you think will be the result of this season? I think Notre Dame will play in the championship game this year if our O-line gets to average or above. I think it's certainly possible. I really don't. I don't see a team other than Alabama that's really impressed me so far in 2 games. Georgia's offense is a mess. Now, they're going to get some guys back, but their offense is average. Clemson's offensive line's as bad as Notre Dame's is, really. There's no team that just blows me away. I think Notre Dame, with their combination of skill and talent on both sides of the ball, has a chance to be that team if they can get it figured out. I mean, they just got to get it figured out. Will they play in the championship if the line is above average? I don't know. They got a shot, and that's kind of the frustrating thing about this whole thing. Daniel Wade, maybe somebody can help Daniel. I've never tried to send a super chat. I never have really done a lot of research on super chats because it's not something we planned on doing when we first got started. He says, how do I send a super chat? When I click on the $sign, it won't let me type a message. So if somebody can help him out with that in the chat, I would really appreciate it. Let me get back up here to where we were. Okay, here we go. Garrett's D-Rock, Paul. Okay, Jacob Steely. Brian, hire me for one conference, and I'll ask BK all the questions the fans want to hear. And I'll probably lose access at that point in time. So I'm going to go ahead and not do that, Jacob. But I like where your head's at. Could you imagine if like Brian Kelly did like a fan press conference where like fans could call in and ask questions? That'd get out of hand. That'd be a little crazy. And Daniel figured it out. There you go. So I got a little special treat for you. My mom is actually looks like my mom is in the chat today. So she's watching the show from the hospital room. So glad to see that. So she clearly will see all the good wishes that everybody's sending her away. So there you go. But Daniel, I'm glad you got that figured out, and I appreciate you very much for sending that super chat a lot. I appreciate you being a part of our show, and I hope to meet you and everybody else here one of these days at one of these tailgates. So we'll see how tomorrow's goes first. All right, back up to some more questions. Again, thank you for that super chat. Some of these comments, rage quit. All right, the D-line couldn't get anywhere near the quarterback for Toledo, which is scary. I mean, I have no clue what you're talking about. Notre Dame had 5 sacks last week. They had double-digit tackles for loss. I have no clue what you're talking about. Chance Dunn says, I haven't watched Rudy either or Newt Rockney. Sorry, guys, I'll get on it. That's the thing. Everybody in the Irish Breakdown family, if you've not watched Rudy this season yet, before the season, that's what we're all doing tonight, okay? So if you haven't watched Rudy by the time the game kicks off tomorrow, just not okay. I will watch it tonight too. We'll get with my wife and we'll go and get watching. We'll watch it. Thank you for that, Alan. So this regard to the stadium capacity says maybe because there's a lethal pandemic about it with regards to attendance. I'm not trying to get into your comment more than says no, there isn't more to it. Yeah, there is. Okay, I mean you can bury your head in the sand and just lethal pandemic, but that doesn't explain why that's not the numbers that we saw across the country. No other top programs were anywhere close to having the capacity level that Notre Dame had. Michigan, it's like 2.5 hours away. Is there not a pandemic in Michigan? 100% capacity. They had over 40,000 more fans than Notre Dame had. Alabama was at 94 capacity. Ohio State was over 90% capacity. Georgia was 100% capacity. Arkansas was in the 88, 89% capacity. So you can't sit there and say that it's just that, because it's not looking at that. There's a lot more to this than that. And I think that you're misguided with all due respect. North Carolina sold out their stadium. Thank you. Virginia Tech was at like 88, 89%. Notre Dame was down at USC numbers. Richard Robinson says, hey, coach, great job as always. How would you attempt to neutralize Karlaftis? I think we talked a little bit about this early in the show. I think you have to run at him successfully. You're going to have to be prepared to have people chip on him effectively. That means like a tight end or a running back kind of helping out an offensive tackle. I think you need to screen at him. I think you need to be able to throw at him at times, like some bubble screens or tunnel screens or, things like that, part of the screen game. I think you need to boot away from him at times, which means you fake a handoff in his direction, then boot away from him. There are times, depending early in the game, you got to watch him. If he's kind of coming level, then you boot around him to him. If he's coming high, then you don't want to boot to him. Maybe you run like a sprint draw behind him, something like that. So there's a lot of things you can do. It takes a lot of creativity, but that's also part of the problem is if you have to come up with this real creative game plan to beat one guy, that can get you into some issues. All right, let's get down here. Another super chat from Searcher Green. Get well soon, Brian's mom. Thank you for that, Searcher Green. Appreciate that very, very much. All right, and then here's a comment that's kind of ridiculous. Chris Broughton says listing Southern college programs capacity isn't the point you think it is, Brian. Okay, what about Michigan? What about Ohio State? Right? So, I mean, you want to try to make this like a Southern thing, like some kind of shot at Southern people. It's kind of ridiculous comment. But what about Michigan? What about Ohio State? Do you know what Penn State's capacity was? They were in the, I think, high 90s. Pennsylvania. Okay, so what point do you think it's making? Okay, because this isn't a Southern versus Northern thing. Because the Northern states were just like the Southern states. Michigan, just like it. Okay, Ohio State, just like it. Penn State, just like the Southern states. Notre Dame and USC were the outliers. USC's fan base sucks. We all know that. Why was Notre Dame different? Is COVID part of it? No one's saying it's not. But that big of a part of it, there was a lot more to this than just that. And I think you're being naive if you don't think there's more to it than just COVID. Because otherwise, why is Notre Dame the only big-time program that was that way? You have to be able to answer that question. And just making little Southern jokes or shots at Southern teams doesn't make the point that you think it is. Okay? It's just not. And I love this. My wife and I live in Maryland. We travel to 2 to 3 Notre Dame games a year. We won't be at any this year. A lot of highly educated people are still taking courses. You know what? I got no use for this. This is a really ignorant comment. You think it's about education? You think it's about ignoring? Give me a break with this kind of nonsense, okay? First of all, I've said COVID is a part for some people. Some people don't want to come because of that. Totally respect it. But if you think that's the only reason that Notre Dame's fan base was significantly lower than everybody else in the North, the South, and the Southwest, and the East, you're misguided, and your arrogance is really something I don't have any more time for. So we're not going to answer questions from you anymore. All right, let's get down here to some more questions. Yeah, see, now this is a rational thing, but apparently, Brandon, you're not intelligent enough to understand. That's actually not a problem. It's only COVID related and only a problem at Notre Dame. Because apparently Notre Dame's the only fan base that has people smart enough to take the virus seriously. So just ridiculous. I can't stand insults like that. I'm going to try to get some more questions here. We're going to wrap this thing up here pretty soon. Connor O'Doherty says, Coach, in my opinion, there are very few corners in the nation that can guard Kevin Austin when he is matched up one-on-one. Do you think he should be targeted as much as Mayer? I don't think he's not being targeted as much as Mayer for any other reason than just the way that teams are playing. I think Kevin's been targeted quite a bit. When you're getting pressured, a lot of times you're going to look for that shorter route, and a lot of the catches that Michael Mayer's had have been on shorter throws. He's caught a lot of option throws. He's caught some underneath routes, things that are a little shorter. Kevin's stuff has been mostly like intermediate to deep. He caught a few, of those quick throws on Saturday against Toledo, and I'd like to see a little bit more of that. Get some crossing routes and things like that. But I also think it's about breaking him in a little bit. You don't really know what Kevin was going to give you until he played. You kind of had an idea what Michael Mayer could do because of what Michael Mayer did last year. So, I think that as he proves himself more, you'll see him get targeted more and more and more. But at the same time, it's just also the nature of the offense. That tight end is going to get a lot of those quick shots when the ball has to come out quicker. You're going to look for the shorter. It's like you're going to look for the running backs on the checkdowns. You're going to look for the tight end over the middle of the field. When the pressure's coming, that's the first thing that's kind of in your line of sight as a quarterback. And I think that's why you're going to continue to see that if the pressure continues to come the way that it is. Patrick Barnes says, how much improvement can you actually be possible on the right side of the line, considering Lugg and Madden are so experienced? As usual, thanks for another great podcast while I work. I think Lugg's been solid. I think Lugg's been okay. I think that he's not really one of my issues. Madden has been a problem. Now, how much better can it get? It can get better, because here's the reason I think Cade Madden can be better. Cade's issues the first couple games aren't coming down to like, oh, he's unathletic, which he's not very athletic, or he's not very strong, because he is pretty strong. It's technical. It's his footwork's not where it needs to be. He's not finishing off blocks, not from I don't have the ability to finish off blocks. It's when I hit a guy, stop moving my feet. That's a technical problem. Fix that technical problem, and all of a sudden he's going to play better. Is he going to be an All-American? No, he's not that kind of guy. Can he be better than what he's been? Yeah, I think so. So, and part of it too is work playing together. You know, they've both, Lugg and Madden have played a lot together, but they haven't played a lot. They've both played a lot. They haven't played together very much. And that communication is a big part of this. And that's why I haven't been as upset about like the run throughs, and, you know, you want to clean that stuff up, but like, you know, Zeke Correll not seeing a guy coming from the backside on a run through on a zone run. That's a mistake. You got to clean that up. You got to coach guys up. But it's not really something that I look at and say, gee, that's just going to happen all year. You kind of expected a little bit of that in the first couple games. It's more of the technique is poor. The firing off the ball is poor. The finishing off blocks is poor. Those are the more problematic things, because those are more about, are you being coached and prepared correctly, than they are about, you know, the cohesiveness of the line. But those are also the most correctable things, in my opinion. You can do things in practice to work on, you know, hey, are you firing off the line well? Are you coming off hard? Are you driving through contact? That's a coaching thing. Can it be corrected pretty quickly? Yeah, you just make sure you rep the heck out of it during the week. Those are always things that you can do. You do those things and you're going to be in good shape. And I think as long as Notre Dame can continue doing that, then I think they'll get better and better each week. I have no doubt that they'll continue to get better. Now we need to see them do it. Got a couple more super chats down here. Steve Rolfe with a $10 super chat. Don't worry, Patrick. I think we got to you, right? Steve Rolfe with a $10 super chat. I appreciate that very, very much. Paul Olmstead says, $10 super chat. Just want to say thanks again, brother. See you tomorrow. And please put this to the Brian Driscoll Hotel Star Upgrade Fund. See, you and Bronx ND fan, always trying to start problems. Always trying to start problems. Oh, goodness. Okay, let's see here. Okay. OC Irish fan, has anyone done a cost analysis like they do for Major League Baseball? How are Notre Dame ticket prices compared to other major programs? I have not. Honestly, I don't know if I'd have time to do that, but that'd be very interesting. But I don't think this is necessarily just a problem at Notre Dame. I think the reason this hurts Notre Dame more than others in regards to the ticket prices, because it's not as big of a fan base in the local community. And so I think it does make it harder. I know people I have a friend of mine that I was able to get some tickets for to tomorrow's game. He's a dad. He's got like 5-6 kids. The only reason it's the first time he's ever taken his kids to a Notre Dame game. Why? Because he's getting the tickets for free. So, I mean, there's a lot of people like that. Okay. But I'd be curious to see that. I'd be curious to see kind of how that impacts games. Like I know like South Carolina, for example, somebody in our message board said that they actually went back on, like they went down, like they're charging less than they have in recent seasons for this season. Be curious about that. And Battery Boy says people didn't want to go to Toledo game because it was against Toledo and over $100 for any seat. Here's the deal, though, guys. It's not one reason. There's multiple reasons why the stadium wasn't full. And if you ignore all the reasons, then you don't actually address the problem. If you just want to say it's just COVID, then you're going to miss the problem. You're going to keep doing what you're doing, and this is going to become a problem down the road. You're also creating a situation in your local community where you're becoming less and less accessible to your local community. That's a problem as well. There are a lot of reasons for it. No one has said that COVID isn't part of the reason. But to say it's the primary reason or the biggest reason, that is misguided. And then to say you're gonna, live in Maryland and you're just gonna insult a big chunk of the country because you think you're smarter than they are, and they're not taking this serious and all this other kind of stuff. That's insulting, disrespectful, and I don't appreciate it. It's also wrong because it's not the only reason or even the primary reason. There's a lot of reasons why people didn't come. And as I've talked to people about why they didn't come, I've probably talked to 50 Notre Dame fans that have either given up their season tickets or didn't go to the game or whatever reason. And I can tell you about maybe 5 of them. It was COVID related. The rest of them, it was something else that Notre Dame has done, something to piss them off to make them not come. And you can't be blind to that. Otherwise, this is going to continue to be a problem. And somebody else made a point too. Notre Dame selling out tickets has been a problem for a while, before 2020. And they've had to sell mass tickets. Notre Dame was buying their own tickets in 2019, late in the season. They were buying their own tickets to still be a sellout. Okay. They were not, and you looked at some of the crowds, like the BC crowd late in 2019, it wasn't close to full. It wasn't nearly as bad as it was on Saturday against Toledo, but there was a lot of empty seats that day. This is not a new thing. And that was before COVID. Okay, so you're ignoring it. Paul, we talked about this earlier in the show a couple times, so I would encourage you to kind of go back and take a peek at that. P Money Official says, I played against George Karlofsky my sophomore year in high school, and the dude was just a beast. He's a beast now, too. D-Rock says, I might have missed this. Any numbers from Peacock streaming the game last week? You know what? I don't know if I've seen anything like that. I'd have to look into that. I probably should have looked into that a little bit sooner, but I'm curious what those numbers were. I don't even know how they evaluate something like that, to be completely honest with you. That'd be something to be interested to find out. Be very curious to find that out. Let me see if I can look here real quick. Yeah, I'll have to find that. I'll look into that, D-Rock. That's an interesting one. Rob Thidoff says, Brian, how long did you live in Lima as a kid? I grew up in Delphus and went to Delphus St. John's and graduated there in 1994. I had family that actually went to Delphus Jefferson. So I had 3 cousins that went to Delphus Jefferson because my aunt lived out in Delphus for a long time. We used to go to the Delphus pool all the time when we were kids. But I left Lima in 1993. My family moved to Virginia. But I was at Bath up until Bath Elementary and Bath Middle School. We left when I was in the 8th grade. So lived there from the time I was born in 1978 till the summer of 1993. And then I lived there again a couple times. I coached at Wittenberg, lived in Ohio. I lived in Lima for about a year when I was an adult. I was working as a youth pastor at a church there. And my grandma still lives there, so I go back there quite often. But yeah, I had family in Delphus. Delphus Pool was the place to be back in the day, man. I remember those days. Martin says, hey, Brian, off topic, but I sent in a huge order for the Built Bars and others 2 weeks ago and still haven't gotten them. Any ideas? Lastly, came down to recruit section number 32 and say hello. Yes, I will. I got to remember to write that down, Martin, because you emailed me about that before the game, and it was kind of a crazy day for Vince and I on Saturday. So, yeah, we'll definitely try to come down and see you. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. There should have been a tracking number that was provided when you made the order about, say, if it was too, I got this thing. So let me pull up when your order was sent, because I tracked those. So just give me 1 second here, Martin. I apologize, but you made your order on, where are you, Martin? Did I not write yours down? Doesn't look like I have yours written down, Martin. So I'm going to have to go look at that and see where it was. But yeah, I don't have that order in, so I don't know. Maybe you didn't go through the Irish breakdown thing, but I don't have you marked down unless it was in a different name. But yeah, usually they take a little over a week to get in. So yeah, I would just look at the tracking number or the tracking device on there. If there's not there, shoot me an email and I'll help you walk you through it. Paul Olmstead says, I have to just disagree somewhat. Brian, the locals used to be the majority of the fan base, but slowly over the years, they've been priced out. Paul, I'm just not sure what you're disagreeing with. So I'm not sure what part of the many things that I've said about this in the show you do. So if you just follow up and let me know kind of what I said that you're disagreeing with, because that's kind of was one of the things that I talked about is there's less access to the local community, which I think has hurt Notre Dame's fan base. Steve Rolfe says, what's your least favorite road venue you've been to since you've been covering Notre Dame? I don't like going out to LA to cover games. I think the Coliseum was kind of cool at first, just the history and all that. Last time we were there, they're doing a lot of construction, and kind of the coolness of it kind of wears off after a couple trips there. I don't care much for LA. I think worst, you know what? There haven't been really a whole lot of bad venues. I don't like particularly doing NFL stadiums. I think it takes away from some of the on-campus feel, but it's not that they're bad, but like the game at MetLife, I didn't really care much for that. I would have rather been the game at Syracuse, for example, or, those kind of things. But I kind of like games on college campuses, to be honest with you. Martin says, we were also down about 398 ushers for the Toledo game for some reason. My prediction is tomorrow our team will play with a nasty chip on their shoulders. God bless and go Irish. I'm with you. Jeff DeMonk says, boxes on the front porch. Enjoy tomorrow. Go Irish. So Jeff has donated hamburger buns for tomorrow. So I appreciate that, Jeff, very, very, very much. All right, let's get down to some more here. OC Irish, if the 8,500 students in Notre Dame, how many attend games? I don't know, but the student section on Saturday against Toledo was packed. They were spread out a lot. There was a lot of students there, from what I could tell. Yep, it was a lot of fun. Santa Cam said, sad that they had half the concessions closed for the game. Ridiculous waiting lines for a quarter just to grab a drink. If people are scared of COVID, stay home. The rest of the world is living life. I mean, I don't think that's fair either. There are some people that, my wife and I had this conversation recently. I've always been a believer that if you're sick and not feeling well, you don't go out. Like, this is something that we would talk about like before COVID was a thing. If you wake up on Sunday morning and you've got a runny nose and you're not feeling good, don't go to church, right? Stay home, because you don't know what kind. So so I'm not a big fan of masks. I'm not trying to make a political statement here. This is just my personal opinion, but I've had some discussions with people who also don't like masks, and they'll say, I see someone with a mask and I want to go say, don't say something to them, because you don't know what that person's situation is. There are people who genuinely have immune deficiency problems that any kind of virus can be dangerous to them, especially a virus that's still so new and you don't have any built up immunity for it. So, people have to make whatever decisions that they think are best for them. I don't have any problem with somebody saying, hey, I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to get a vaccine. I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to get a vaccine. I'm not going to go to the game because I'm concerned about COVID. Hey, you know what? Good on you for you sitting down and you and your family coming to what you think is the best decision for you and your family. But then don't mock people that make a similar decision, but they come to a different answer than yours. Don't also assume that because people make a different a decision than you, that they're somehow misinformed. I can't stand that. People have to make whatever's decision best for them. And I'm not judging you if you do or don't come to a Notre Dame game. I just think we have to have an open and honest conversation to say, hey, this isn't something that just popped up in 2021. Notre Dame's problem selling out stadiums is something that has reared its ugly head even in the 2 years before COVID. And it was something that was discussed before COVID. And people would talk about how, they're going out there and they're having to buy tickets because they're not selling out their stadium. That's a problem that has to be addressed. Has COVID exacerbated that problem? I'm sure to a degree it has. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it than that. And we need to be able to have that conversation. All right, here we go. Last few questions before we get out of here. Scott Yerbick says, "Hi, Brian. Long-time Irish fan since birth. What was your first Notre Dame home game you attended? Mine was Michigan at Notre Dame, September 5th, 1998. It's a good game to go to. Mine, sadly, was the Notre Dame USC game in 2007. It was not a good day for Notre Dame. But the cool part about it is it was my first Notre Dame game, home or away, and it was also my dad's, which was pretty cool. So I got to experience that with my dad, my brother-in-law, and a friend of his who was also a Notre Dame fan. So that was a real fun experience. We came back later that year, my wife and I did, for our first game together, and we weren't married at the time yet. We were just dating, and saw him play Duke. So that was my first Notre Dame win, was 2007 against Duke. So yeah, my first 2 games at Notre Dame, well, actually Notre Dame period, but at Notre Dame Stadium were both games in 2007. So I picked quite the year to go. Corey D says, "I first started listening to you when it was you and Lou. You guys brought different perspective, great chemistry. Rest in peace, Lou." Thank you for the super chat. And it's funny. I was talking with somebody about this last night, and I so thoroughly enjoyed doing shows with Lou. And like you said, we brought completely different perspectives. And the thing I liked about it is, I knew what my wheelhouse was. He knew what his wheelhouse was, and we played off of it. And we're taking this show in a different direction simply because Vince and I understand that we both have very similar backgrounds, very similar takes on things. And so we're trying to, instead of trying to create a fake or a forced, not fake, but a forced sort of difference, we're just kind of turning into the skid, and say, hey, look, this is who we are. Let's just go right into that. And I think this is a very good dynamic as well. It's just different. And I also think that with Lou, it was fun because like Lou was someone I grew up reading and listening to. When I first got on the beat, 2 people, I don't know why, but like as soon as I got on the beat, there's a lot of people on the beat that just like would ignore me, not give me the time of day. I don't know why. Didn't really care. But 2 people really took me under their wing and helped me along and gave me advice and became friends. And eventually I started working with Lou. Lou was one of them. The other one was Tim Priester from Irish Illustrated. He was at the Rivals at the time. But Tim was someone that, again, I grew up reading him and Lou. And even though I was their, competitor, because I was not with either side at the time, they didn't look at it that way. And they were good people and helped me along and gave me advice. And sometimes that advice was, hey, man, you got to be careful. You can't just come out and say something like that. You've got to, say what you want to say, but maybe do a little different way. And it was invaluable to me, and it's helped me get to where I am today. And so that's why I've always had a great respect for both of those guys. And I've always appreciated just what they bring to the table as sort of they were the deans of the Notre Dame beat. And didn't always agree with them. That's kind of part of what makes this fun, but always had a great deal of respect for both of them. And then the fact that I got a chance to work with Lou was a tremendous, tremendous honor for me. And then Bronx ND fan jumped on late. Well, thank you for the super chat, Corey D. And thank you also, Bronx ND fan. Jumped on late, looking forward to a hot start and controlling the game until the end. Keep up the great work. I think that part is going to be key, Bronx. I think that this team just needs a confidence boost early. I do, especially the offensive line. I think if they can kind of come out early and really just pop some people in the mouth and just be physical, move some guys, maybe rip off a nice run, let Jack Cohn sit in the pocket and make a big throw. I think something like that, if they can get off to a good start, force a couple punts, get a couple scores early, I think they're going to come and just say, hey, boy, we're rocking. Like we're really good. We this is who we can be. Let's keep doing this. I think if that happens, I think they're going to roll Purdue. And that's kind of where my prediction came from, Bronx, is I think that is what we're going to see. I think they're going to come out and play well early. I think they're going to build some early just, momentum. And I think they're going to play well. I mean, it's a prediction based off no evidence. I haven't seen it in the first 2 games. It's just kind of, maybe I'm giving them more credit than they deserve. Maybe I am, but that's just kind of what I think is going to happen. And that's what I hope is going to happen. So, and we'll kind of see if that happens. Scott Yerbick, the 1998 game was a college graduation gift from my parents. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Paul Holmes said his first game was 1974, Notre Dame, Purdue, and we lost. And you're going to be there at tomorrow's game, so hopefully you don't bring that same kind of energy. So it'll be very interesting. All right, so that is going to do it for today's show. I appreciate all the super chats. I appreciate everybody that was part of this, that asked questions and was a part of what we're doing. I appreciate all the kind words for my mom. I hope to see a lot of you tomorrow at the tailgate. As I said, we'll be in the stadium a lot. I'll send out a tweet from @CoachD178 when I finally get settled. We'll be in the stadium a lot. We'll have a big blue Notre Dame tent. We'll also have the Irish Breakdown flag. That flag right there will be hanging up somewhere. And so I hope that everybody's going to be at the game, can swing by. We got a super chat here before we leave. Connor Patton says, God bless Lou, a very good man. Lou was a genuinely wonderful human being, and I do miss him very much. I was just talking with him about him with somebody last night. So appreciate being part of it, but hope to see you all tomorrow. Again, we'll be there talking ball up until it's time to go into the stadium. So looking forward for a chance to meet a lot of you. And yeah, very, very excited to meet a lot of you. So I hope you had a great show. I'm sorry that today got a little bit combative. Probably should have not been as aggressive with that against Chris, but I just get frustrated when people take those kind of shots at people that simply because they don't agree with them. I don't like that, but I should have probably handled a little bit better, but I didn't, and we'll live and learn. So appreciate all y'all being with us today. Look forward to seeing a bunch of you tomorrow, and we'll be back tomorrow after the game with our post-game show. It'll be me and Vince. Have a great day. See y'all very, very soon.